All right, welcome to my elite crew of DeMystifiers. If you guys are here, then you know how much fun this series is, and anybody that misses out, too bad for them. I feel like there's really nothing like it on the internet, and I see we've got Slick Dissident. He's at a different battle station, Zebra Free, but I also think the signal is going to be really clear, so even more excited about it. What's up, dude?
See you, buddy. Yeah, signal's looking good. This is going to be gravy, gravy, gravy. A lot of sacred numerology in the dates. And yeah, we're going to get to see another side of some of these characters. And yeah, things are taking a little different flavor now. And it's kind of neat. The patterning is on a bigger scale of magnitude and significance. So let's party.
Let's party. Okay, so speaking of sacred numbers, as you guys have been following, I like to peg two cards of the major arcana to each episode. It seems to really work out for me. And this time around, I first thought it was going to be the Hierophant because they were searching for this guy who's like, the Pope of their TVA and all that. But I was wrong. It's the Sun. He's the Sun in this episode, 7 Ways from Sunday. And I got the documents, I got the Gematria, I got all the evidence within the episode itself to prove that. And we're also going to be looking at the star card, which is cool because, a lot of this is about the formation of the world, aka the formation of the TVA in this episode. And on the Kabbalistic tree of life, there are these paths between the different spheres or Sephiroth. And in the previous episode where we were introduced to the original version of Kang, or He Who Remains, the guy played by Jonathan Majors, we had this interesting thing going on with the devil card and what was the other card for that episode? I don't remember, but the pathways were leading to the Yesod sphere, right? Which is foundation and the generative organs and the generative power. And there's more than one way to reach Yesod. And in this episode, we're coming at it from the sun card and the star card, which are also pointing to that place. So we're kind of in a full circle thing going on here. It's like we were at the end of the oroboros, now we're at the beginning of the oroboros. And this is the episode where we meet, the younger, new, shiny version of that character. So it all fits really well. And where we left off last episode, for everybody that was here or wasn't here, we covered episode 2, and that one concluded with, let's see, how did that one conclude? Oh yeah, the renegade TVA agents going and pruning all the timelines, aka doing population reduction, population control to save the world, to Tikkun Olam. So that was like a sort of bummer downer that it's left out on, and we're kicking off this episode with a very different feeling. It's like it's much more, it's much more fun, whimsical, hopeful, all things that represent the spring equinox time that this episode esoterically is talking about. So I guess I'll pull up the slides. Oh my gosh, the sacred number stuff in this one, Gabe. I just can't wait to get some of your reactions, especially in real time with good connection speed. Okay, so all
Yeah,
right, good.
buddy.
We got this up, looking good. You want some commentary here?
Well, definitely the 93 stands out right away. It's the agape, and it's also will and love in Greek have a isopsological value of 93. It's a big thing to the thelemic order. And that's one of the foundations of the particular deck that we go through. Uh, but it was a sacred number before those orders came into play. You know what I mean? Those guys are latecomers to what 93 is really all about. But yeah, will and love. Fortune card comes to mind when we say will and love, springtime. Absolutely. What you thinking?
Well, I can't help but notice. Well, you know what? The 1893 being the title of the episode. The first thing I did was start to combine the numbers, add them, multiply them, and I don't recall what it is added up. I found multiplication to be much more interesting. Let's see, 8 plus 9 plus 3, that's 20. C20. But 8 times 9 times
Oh,
3 in
nice.
multiplication gives us 216. 216 is Gabe's favorite number, I'm pretty sure. And it is it's the value, 216 is the value of 6 times 6 times 6. And 6 times 6 times 6 is also giving us the magic square of the sun. And like I said, the sun card is in this episode because this magic square of the sun is a square of 6 rows by 6 columns. So 6 by 6. And each row and each column adds up to 666. Now, once you realize that the number of the beast or whatever is not talking about like the devil incarnate per se, other than, you know, that the sun is the devil in wintertime when it kills off all the vegetation. It's actually a mystical number that's like, you know, it's about the formation of life. It's the cube of carbon. There's nothing really evil about it. There's a lot of numbers though in Hebrew gematria that can get us to 216, and we'll be bringing up a bunch of them as we go, including this book I got from PK. Thank you, PK. That has all this Hebrew gematria that kind of got me on the right track, and then, you know, I've found more sources for that since then. But it lists out like numbers equivalent to different demons of Goetia, and I've brought them up before. And there's one, get this, there's one that equals 216 in its name, and its name is Orobos. So it's basically Oroboros, but without the bore. Orobos, or Orob. Demon number 55 of Goetia.
Oh.
Yeah. The fact that it's number 55 is kind of interesting too, because like 5 times 5 is 25. And there's tons of 25, 205 stuff in here too, which I'll explain as we go. But he's holding up the what card was that? You're holding up a card. I just made you big.
It was a card of change. Yep, and it's the oroboros. And also the analima. 216 is a heavy hitter on the analima because it's actually on the X. We cross the downfall of the X on 827, and I'm pretty sure 8 times 27 gives you 216. So it is
That is
encoded
correct.
into the natural cycles 1,000 different ways. Yeah, nice.
But then isn't
Also,
the
Barack
other side
Obama's
of the
birthday.
analemma? Isn't the spring side of the crossing of the analemma tax day?
Boom, sun card. Totally.
And if I'm not mistaken, it's
Yeah.
what in like full reduction is it that T is 2 and A is 1 and X is 6, right? I learned this from you.
Bada boom, bada bing. You got it, buddy. You got it. And this is Passover. Also, this is the initiation of Passover. So the X of the Analema is significant for many reasons, but particularly because the next cycle where the X is crossed is the holiday of Vulcanalia, also Vulturnalia. These holidays of they should be holidays of consumption because it's the coming through August, and it's time to get. It's like a competition to eat and put things into storage for the fall. So yeah, it's so synchronous. Yeah. And one more thing, it just dawned on me. I always forget. I have so many things to remember. 93 simply times 2. So it's a thelemic hello or greeting. So you'll walk up and you'll be like, "Yo, 93," and the other person will be like 93, and it's like a handshake from afar. Well, you add them together and you get the lunar standstill cycle, 186, 186. And so yeah, dude, that is a good book for a Jim Carrey experience, I bet. So yeah, 18.6 is the lunar standstill cycle. So two thelemites saying hello is encoding an eclipse, which is also encoding theater masks. A smiley cycle is a downward arch of an eclipse, and a smiley face is an upward cycle of an eclipse path. So the theater masks are also intrinsic to this encode.
Awesome. Yeah, comedy and tragedy, the winter solstice and the spring equinox, which is hugely relevant in this episode. The sacrificial victim and the scapegoat. Those two goats, the ram and the Aries and the Capricorn. So let's get into talking a little bit about these cards themselves. So first of all, the sun card, amazing here. So we have the letter on the sun card is the Hebrew letter resh, and resh equals 200. The sun card is card number 19. And so if you get that 200 and you just drop the zeros and the 19 of the sun card, you get 219, which is today's date. Coincidentally, today is 219. Thought that was kind of funny. As someone who hasn't done a lot of studying of the imagery iconography on the Thoth Tarot, this is one that I haven't looked at much, and I'm amazed by it, really. There's so much going on with this. You have the butterfly wings on these solar twins.
Yeah, man. It's this is C3. Sorry. I was going to say this is C3PO. C3PO's abdomen is open in this exact shape, the gap in C3PO's abdomen. And R2D2 is the moon card. You just flip the moon card upside down and it's clearly R2D2. And so they know the mechanics of the heavens. They have mastery of the mechanics of the heavens. But they've also funneled admiration into the machines. And so C3PO and R2D2 are one of the original, we're going to have civil rights movement for robots. Yeah, they started that one a long time ago. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I also find it interesting that the zodiac in the sun card for the Thoth Tarot has got, rather than Capricorn being on bottom and Cancer being on top, the keystone being Cancer, as it's depicted in Masonry or any astrology chart that puts Aries on the east horizon, they've reversed it here, and Capricorn's on top. So I don't know if that's an inversion or if it's meant to be a clue to something. Very strange. And I think it's all perspective. Does the year begin when the sun dies, or does the year, or is the top of the year when the sun is at its height? These are questions that it's kind of like a chicken or an egg type of question. It's a paradox. A circle doesn't have a beginning or an end. So it's one of those examples of how life changes based on how you decide to look at it. But I'm most interested here, the decodes I've been doing for this show, they get heavier and heavier into Gematria as my skill at comprehending the Hebrew letters and alphabet and Gematria gets me to deeper and deeper levels of interconnection. And I'm totally seeing a lot of crazy stuff in this one that relates to the resh. So first of all, resh means, it's a letter, but as a word, it means the head. It's it could mean first, the highest, or wisdom, or father, or leader, or rabbi, things like this. And it actually, you get a lot out of putting words forwards and backwards because, Hebrew is read from right to left instead of left to right. So if you put resh backwards, you get sar, which is a word that means a master, a prince, a chief, noble, ruler, general, etc. Like czar, C-Z-A-R, Caesar, or T-Z-A-R, or calling somebody sir. All of that is there. So forwards and backwards, this word basically means the same thing. Now, if you spell out resh, it's spelled resh, yod, shin. Oh, Gabe wants to jump in. All right.
Yes. Before, I don't want to miss that sir, the extra, that honorific. This is card number 19. Card number 19 signifies both senior and junior. SR is a 1-9. JR is a 1-9. So the honorific of senior and junior is a hat, is a head that you wear. It's a signifying mantle that you put on the front to say, I'm Mr. Extra Special Guy. And I'm related to my dad, senior over here. And then before I forget, this is going to be RFK Jr. This is also at the end of Biden. Joe Biden also has a junior on the end of his name. So up on my arch up here, I had Biden in the top, and the next step over has a JR signifier that's going to be a torch from Biden to the Kennedy, the wannabe Kennedy, who's going to be significant in the show going forward. We'll mention it when it comes up.
You know, I's and J's are interchangeable in a lot of languages like Latin. So SIR, sir, and then SJR, senior and junior. I see what you're saying there. So back to the gematria of the word resh. When you spell it out, it's R or resh yod shin, basically. And really, there's no reason that resh in Hebrew as a word should be spelled with a yod in the middle, because the vowels are kind of implied, except for the mystical reasons that would require the word to equal 510, because that's what those letters equal. And that 510 gives you a reduction to 6, which is important because we're talking about the magic square of the sun. It's 6 by 6. 6 is sex. It's the generative power. There's nothing more exemplary of the generative power than the sun, obviously. And then with the resh having a meaning of first or commencement or the beginning, there's a particularly good example in Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, very first line of the Bible. And the first word in Hebrew is barashit, which has got the resh in it, bar resh it. And that's erroneously or deceptively translated to mean in the beginning. But it actually means something more like, first, by wisdom, God created the heavens and the earth. Not in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And it's not even God, it's Elohim. It's like female goddesses. Like that's a feminine termination, Alaim. So Bereshit, Alaim, like totally different than in the beginning God created. But this episode is like an in the beginning moment, because the events of the first scene are what commence the entire cycle of the story, the creation of the TVA. It's like an Ouroboros type time loop going on, which is pretty awesome. And
yeah, buddy.
Oh,
I got a little side gravy. Can I side gravy?
yeah.
The, the 51st element is antimony. 5-1. 51st element is antimony. It's right after 10. 10 is number 50. The one right after 10 is antimony, and its signifier is S and B. This is likely the Masonic tracing board with strength and beauty, and antimony is used in makeup. The facade, the mask, the mascara, maybe she's born with it, maybe it's Maybelline. And then one more thing, these dancing babies, I happen to know this is a naval ritual that the sailors do uh, when a newbie has crossed the equator line for the first time. In this dance that the two children are doing, the sailors actually put themselves in slave stocks, like the old where your hands are locked in a board and you're locked in with another sailor. He's your cohort. And you guys have to go up on the deck and they throw things at you and spray you with water, and you got to say the magic words to get initiated. So this is crossing the line. And so the resh, caressing the line. And look at the baby. He's crossing, he's like going past that dividing line of the wall in the old Rider-Waite deck. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that they're crossing the equator. But if we're kind of playing with Earth's shape, isn't it interesting that there's a ring at the top of this mountain that Jack and Jill here are kind of crossing a different shaped line?
Well, that's the
I
world
thought some of the
serpent.
flat earthers might get a buzz on that.
That's like the world serpent
Totally.
around Yggdrasil. Yeah, 100%. Placent.
Yep.
Dylan made a really good point here regarding the fact that the sun is exalted in Leo, or rules the sign of Leo, the lion. And with the RL swap, Resh, which is also Ras, like if you were an Etruscan/Phoenician sailor going around the world spreading the system to different places, they called themselves the Rasena. The swap that Ras to an L and you get Lis, which is the Phoenician word for lion. So that's a good one. I didn't think about that, but it's totally there. Now, and then the other card that is significant is the star card. The star card is the Aquarius card. So it has a lot to do with power, The letter on it being hey. Hey is equal to 5, but there are some variant spellings. Like you could get hey Aleph or hey or hey Yod. So it could be 5, 10, 15. There's probably other ways to spell it too. I thought it was interesting to play a little bit with variants because this show is all about variants. But hey, as a letter, it's sort of like exactly like we would say now. Hey, check it out. Hey, look at this. Hey, let me grab your attention. It's a power word. It can mean lo, behold, the, mercy, reveal, window, thread, fence. There could be even more, actually. It's a super crunchy word. Lots going on with hey. But it ultimately represents God's creative power. And that makes sense because this episode is all about power, electricity, natural forces that form the cosmos. And that's really also going back to the 6 of things. The 6 is all about that too. The formative powers of the cosmos, electromagnetism, things like that. Because hey is an exhalation, like, especially if you're Hebrew, that's how you would say it. In Psalm 33:6, it is said, by the word of the Lord were the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. According to the Talmud, that line is referring to the breath of the mouth is referring to the sound of the letter hey, which is the out breath of spirit. So with resh and hey, we're talking about respiration. We're back to this idea of the divine wind, the aura, the pneuma, that first vibration of the waters of chaos to create the heavens and earth. And like we very specifically get that in this episode, vibrating to bring order out of chaos. It's all there. And so with electricity as a concept, that's very Aquarian. The age of Aquarius, it's the age of technology. It's the internet, the interconnectivity of everything. It has to do with that. Aquarius is the water bearer, but it's actually an air sign because it's about the circulation of elements and how even the air is responsible for the circulation of the water, right? And the air is what is circulated around in your body by the bloodstream. So there's so much amazing mysticism with the star and the hay and the rash. Gabe, you got anything on this before we get into the episode proper?
Yes, this card is really activated for me very recently, in a major way, a very major way. I've made an adjustment on the Slick Dissident Enneagram regarding this card in particular. This card is kind of like a linchpin that is kind of turned the shape of things upside down, literally. I've put her into a back handspring position. She's now balanced in the 9th spot because Pluto has gone into Aquarius for the long haul. And so she is now doing what is called the makaku. This is a capoeira backflip. And she's going to stay poised in that position for 20 or 30 years. But she signifies the move. It's called the estobrado, is a broken S. And that's how you get into that position that she's doing. And that is the shape of the Eridanus River. And the Eridanus River goes backwards against time. It actually flows ever so slightly against the flow of time, and it has the winding dance. So the winding, the dancer, Terpsichore, the muse, Terpsichore was the number 8 muse. But also that shadow of the number 8, because it's card number 17, 1 plus 7 gives you the 8, that has the shadow of lust, domineering, or control. And so I'm putting her in the epitome of an expression of control in a one-handed back handspring paused for 20 years. So that's where I am psychically with that card. And it has to do with the leap year. This is the election cycle. And so because of the leap year, I'm making a votive offering. I'm offering up a capoeira maneuver to impress the muse Terpsichore. And we'll see how long I can hold that pose. See how she digs it.
I'm pretty sure the muses, all of them, are impressed with you, buddy. I don't know anybody that has such a direct line to them as you do, psychically, for sure. That's awesome. So I'm going to bring us into the actual slides that depict scenes from the episode, and we open on this weather vane. man, there could not be a more significant and powerful image for sort of symbolizing everything in this episode. The first camera shot. We open on this weather vane. First of all, you can see based on the directions there that there's a wind blowing, and it's the west wind. That's called Zephyr or Zephyrus. And that's the wind that represents springtime. This is likely because when a west wind blows, it points a weather vane's arrow to the east. That's what I think, which is where the sun rises. So that's the beginning or birth of the day in the microcosm, and spring is the birth of the year in the macrocosm. So this firmly right away establishes us in the idea of the beginning of a cycle, macrocosm and microcosm. Now notice that the horse is in the sun card. The child is sitting up on the horse. There's a horse on the weather vane. And also, both of these settings for the episode are in the 19th century, the two places that we visit in this episode, sun card being 19. And overall, it makes sense with the star card and the letter Hey to invoke the wind spirits, the enemy or anemoi at the beginning of the episode, because Hey is an aspiration, like the Holy Spirit, the Heli Gust, which even shows up as a character in this episode, Miss Minutes. She's totally the Holy Ghost. The anima, the pneuma, the breath of life. And you see the butterfly wings on the children of the Thoth version of the sun card. They show up on old paintings of Zephyrus, the west wind, but also Psyche and Cupid. Now here is a great example for us to see how a single deity or an idea of a singular god that is three gets conflated and broken down into a bazillion different gods and goddesses by either intentional deception by the priests or misunderstanding by academics. But so, okay, if you looked at this painting of Zephyrus and his Chloris is her name, or yeah, Chloris, that's her name, the goddess of flowers. They're the consorts for each other. If you look at that though, you wouldn't be able, unless you just knew the label of the painting, you wouldn't know any difference between that and Psyche and Cupid, or Cupid is Eros also. So considering that the east wind is actually called Ioros, the exact same name as Eros, but just with an extra U added in, well, Euros was called the savior of Sparta, the east wind. Same exact name of Eros. Eros is Cupid. You see how Psyche and Cupid are the exact same as Zephyrus and his consort Chloris, who was a goddess of flowers, thus springtime. It's really not all that complicated when you, when you realize these gods and goddesses and mythological characters are the same. Despite their variations in names, the symbols reveal the truth. They're all really the same thing, just at maybe different points in a cycle, but they're not actually separate entities. I don't think they're ever really worshipped as such. Now you also see here I put in the Phoenician letter resh, which, you go ahead.
I was going to say that sounds like an insult to militant mentality. Like the Spartans are like badasses, and to say, "Oh yeah, this little light naked child saved your whole culture." That's like really putting salt on a wound, I think. Uh, and also another thing about Spartan is they were more spear oriented, like hands-on style, and archery was kind of at one point was considered for cowards. And so to say that an archer saved Sparta might be saying like, we conquered you and now we're going to insult your memory by saying this little cherub is how we did it. Because Achilles dies from an arrow, and he's a spear master of the spear. So yeah, I think there's a jab in there.
Okay, so spear actually comes up later in a good way. But I put in here the Phoenician letter resh, which is like a mirrored version of the Greek rho, which is their letter R. And you see how it looks like a flag? That's perfect because the symbol of the wind and of wind representing God, that comes up in a lot of different areas, particularly the word netter. Take it or leave it. I have a lot of problems with hieroglyphics and how they're translated and the alleged antiquity of them. But The hieroglyphic that means netter or nature or a god, like lowercase g, is a flag. So the wind, that's because the wind is the first cause. It's the invisible primary substance or action. God, as the wind, moves upon the face of the waters. But the word in Genesis is really more like he vibrates the waters. And of course, wind and mind are the same word philologically if you do that WM swap. And the words for soul, the soul, like our soul, it's anima, animus, pneuma, spirit. All of those words also mean wind. And the sun is called soul. And the last thing about this establishing shot, when I was doing some looking into Chicago, I'm pretty sure this part of Chicago is called Wolf Point, which is fascinating because we ended the previous episode, which was all about Brad Wolf. So we're beginning where we ended in that sense, which is pretty cool. But then the camera pans down from this sky in this weather vane, and you see the first person we see when the camera pans down is where the horse, again, the horse, just in case we didn't notice the horse on the weather vane. This is the beginning of the Kabbalah, the transmission of wisdom. Kabbalos, that's a horse. Symbols for the Kabbalah, the secret of the alphabets and letters are the horse and the ship, because these things transport information or goods from one place to another, just like language and writing, or transport wisdom from one person in time to another person at another time. And then we immediately see a child and a dog. So there's some symbol of the sun child as the fool embarking on a journey. He's saying, come on, come on. Well, on is the name of the sun. So we're at the beginning of a cycle or a journey here, like the fool who is with the dog. And we're still in the same camera shot. It goes down and around the corner and zooms in onto the ground where we see shoes stepping into a pool of mud. Shoes. Okay, why shoes? First of all, shoes they equal to the word in Hebrew for a shoe or a sandal equals 200, like the rash. So that's great. They're a symbol of the motive power, the power to move, just like the wind. They represent the power of movement. So as we see the shoes stepping into the mud, we're seeing the power of movement and life being put into the mud. So we started with the wind and the weather vane. That's allegorical to the breath of life entering the vessel of dust or earth, Adam, in the beginning, in Genesis. Also, the person she is here to see is the solar child. He's an incarnation of Adam. Adam is a name referring to earth or mud. Adam is the child of sky and earth because he is created out of the dust with the wind or the sky father blowing the breath into him, right, into his nostrils. This shot clearly establishes that we started with the sky, the father, Kronos, up there with the weather vane, and then the camera descends all the way down to the earth for a close-up of the shoe stepping in the mud. The fact that it is mud is even more symbolic for the generative powers of the sun, because mud is water with earth, and water is related to the sun's generative powers because the sun can't create life without water, but water can't be fluid without the sun. Otherwise, it would be solid ice. So the opening is establishing this shot with the heavens and earth of Genesis 1:1 in the beginning by wisdom, Ba Rashid, the Rash of the sun card. And we're talking about Kronos here, of course, because it's he who remains. It's Kang. He's the time, he's the master of time. Well, Kronos' parents are Oronos, sky, and Gaia, earth. There you go. And we even got a hay in here with a 5 with the rim of this wheel being visible, because we're just doubling the symbolism of the motive power and the breath of life with the shoe and the wheel and the mud and the sky. So just boom, that very first camera shot up top and then panning down, it tells you everything about what's really encoded in this episode. It's the birth of Kronos or Adam.
I got a nice a visual pun. They're setting the mood. They're setting the mood.
It's a good one.
So
Really
yeah,
good
it's
one.
going to be a dirty. They're going to get dirty on this one for sure.
Down and dirty.
Oh, wait. You
So
know what? Well, I forgot. I missed it. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm glad we caught this. Hold on. Mud flood. They're going to be pulling the mud flood
Oh,
card
yeah.
with changing history, alternative history, and mud flood is going to be part of the backdrop of this one. Let's put that on the table now.
Oh, that's such a good call. I totally forgot about that. Because the World's Fairs allegedly are like a cover up of the mud flood and the Great Chicago Fire. Speaking of the Great Chicago Fire, we get panned up and we see it's Renslayer. Okay. And she's in 1868 Chicago. Well, let's just do some number magic. We have 1 times 8 times 6 times 8 is 384. What do you know? There's not that many words that equal 384 in Hebrew Gematria, but one of them is scorch or blast, like the Great Chicago Fire. And in Greek Gematria, the spelling of the city of Gomorrah equals 384. So it's the burning of Gomorrah, God blasting it, right? Blowing it up. And then the other, it's more of like 2 words or a phrase, but hey, it's she's here to find her Messiah, her Lord, Victor Timely. 384 is the value of the phrase Yahweh Messiah, the God Savior or Savior God. So the Great Chicago Fire is 3 years from this date. It's in 1871. But I find it fascinating that they picked this specific year, 1868. There's a lot of reasons for it. One of them, maybe, I don't know. It's like when I say they picked it, I'm like, who's they though? Was it an AI that knows how to weave all the symbols together in perfect harmony? Is it some spiritual forces that are influencing the creative process? Is it occultists that actually do all this on purpose? The last one seems the least likely to me. Oh man, thank you for the support, Kyle. That is a really generous super chat. I appreciate it. I put in so much work on this one. I mean, I always do. These things take a lot, though. Thank you, man. That's a really generous super chat. Love you, Kyle. Don't forget, tippecanoeherbs.com for all the medicinal products that are non-toxic and highly effective using InnerVerse coupon code for 10% off. Always linked in the show notes. Don't forget about that. It's got something for everybody, for everything. So yeah, I think that the reason why it's 1868 is right before the Chicago Fire, but instead of it being on the year of the Chicago Fire, they got the year that has this Gematria encoding that refers to the scorching and the blasting of Gomorrah, the wicked city. That is amazing. I'm more impressed, though, by the God Messiah part of this and how 384 fits in with 216, which we'll get to. It is just wild stuff. Now,
So
okay, go ahead, buddy.
something that I want to throw on the scorch and the blast. Some of the weaves that Kyle brought over to the Slick Dissident channel very recently. If you haven't seen it, come check us out. We went for a couple hours and it was awesome.
I watched that. That was fun.
It turns out he has extracted. Nice, yeah. So you in there. That was a good time. You're next. um, some of the cycles for the cicadas actually harmonize to the Napoleonic reset. And 1803 is when the last time this cicada song was sparked off, 221 years ago. And so he brought up quite a few awesome historical events, like they found rhodinium and I think palladium, which is named after Athena, number 1 personality type, sun card, and fortune card. So those elements were discovered that year. The Electoral College was put into place. 12th Amendment came. Oh, and the Louisiana Purchase was on the table, not on the year we're talking about, but with the cicadas. So these historical echoes, they will come into the Loki series on the timeline. So I just wanted to kind of, because Kyle was on there and we're talking about resets, mud floods, and historical fallouts that the TVA would be interested in. So yeah, those were some of the things to just throw on the table from Kyle and my weaving.
I'm still wrapping my head around all the cicada, really crunchy cicada stuff. When I was in college, they there's an ice cream shop, a local ice cream shop at the college town where I went to school. And when the cicadas came out, it was just seasonal. They had cicada ice cream. I saw the look on your face. I never tried it, but like people would go eat it. I don't know why. I think it was called Sparky's was the name of the ice cream place. Seems bizarre. So get him.
Sounds like Klaus Schwab was prepping people.
That was like way before You Will Eat the Bugs. It was maybe some sort of a pilot program. Yeah. So Renslayer, we see Renslayer. She's getting hailed by Miss Minutes from the barn there. Miss Minutes is the little cartoon artificial intelligence clock that has access to the entire universe in all times and places. She's basically like the Holy Spirit in that sense. She's everywhere and nowhere. And back to the metaphor of the Alaim or Elohim, the female goddesses, because that's what that means. It means goddesses plural. It translated into English as Lord and God, but it's a totally different word in Hebrew. These two are like the goddesses who create the world or create Adam in a sense, because that's what they're here to do. They're here to initiate Adam into existence, or Kronos. So Kronos, I mean, there's so many reasons to know Adam and Kronos are the same guy. Like one of the words they use for God in the Old Testament is Adonai, which is Adonis. Adonis is just Adam with a different termination. It's the same word. Anyway, so Miss Minutes is like the Holy Spirit. She's everywhere and nowhere. And it is also interesting what they do with the names and in this show, especially when you just look at the first letters of full names like Miss Minutes, MM, or Mobius, M. Mobius. So when we're looking at this MM, we've got to think about the letter mem, which is water and memory. There's a way to spell a variant way of spelling mem, where you spell out the words for the letters that create the word mem. So instead of just being mem, yod, mem to spell mem, you spell the first letter, the second letter, and the third letter. So you get mem, yod, mem, yod, vav, dalet, mem, yod, mem. They call this mem in plentitude. It's like the expanded out version. And what do you know? It equals 200, like the letter resh. So there's another mystical link between the power of the sun and the sun is the more like ethereal, non-physical power, and then water is its physical agent. That like the sun cannot create life without water, but water can't be water without the sun. Very important in mysticism. That's why you have so much relation to the water and the sea and the rivers with various gods and goddesses, like Bacchus, meaning stream. So we can also clearly assert that both Miss Minutes and Mobius are associated with memory, because Mobius is defined by his loss of memory of who he used to be, and Miss Minutes has the memory of the entire cycle of the TVA from the beginning of time all the way to the end of time. So there also may be something that was once understood or is being said to us through this gematria in terms of the sun being a type of recorder of memory, or like a memory keeper. We form memories of what we see, and we remember things with like pictures in our mind, and what we have seen is what we expect to see again. Perhaps the sun is like a big eye in the sky, or is mystically considered such, as the sun has seen. Think about that, sun seen, S to the N. It has seen everything that was, so the sun knows everything that will be. There's nothing new under the sun. That old chestnut.
You know, I'm thinking that we're being instructed to remember this moment because the context of it will fill in later. And it's just dawning on me now, thanks to the demystifiers process. I think this is reverse encode of the Abraham Lincoln assassination. And sure enough, we're going to have an interface, a rewriting, a editing, an emergency edit at the snap of a click of a finger we're going to have some bells and whistles pop off around the image or the memory of a giant Abraham Lincoln-like character. And when Wilkes Booth was blasted, there was a 12-day around-the-clock manhunt. This is getting all the saints in order. 12-day around the clock, right? This is a spell. This is the headlines, old school, heavy-handed spellcraft. 12-day around the clock manhunt, and they found him in a barn or a it's actually another booth. It was a hide tanning booth. So Wilkes Booth pops Abe in a booth, jumps out of the booth, says a Jesuit hail call, and limps off stage, even though he's an actor. Total Ophiuchus all the way. The whole thing is Ophiuchus. He's even got a dagger. He's got a high dagger when he says his Jesuit call. And then he jumps out of a booth, and a burning booth. They burnt the booth so he would come out and they could shoot him. Well, that corresponds to the kill order of Caput Garrett Lupinum. If you find him hiding in your house, you have to set it on fire to get him out. So they were adhering to, fulfilling what was expected of you. If a renegade goes in your house, you got to burn your own house down. And that goes to the Third Amendment. Hangman is 1, 2. 1 + 2 is 3. The Third Amendment is Caput Garrett Lupinum still today.
You know, just as far away. So just as far away, but in the other direction, 3 years as the Great Chicago Fire is from 1868, where the scene is happening. 3 years before that, 1865, April 9th is when Lincoln is when the Civil War ends on one side of the Analema. And then April 16th, right on just a few days later, right on the other side of the Analema is when Lincoln is assassinated. So he basically dies on that, like right around that 216 tax day thing. Didn't he like live for a day after being shot? He was probably, what day was he shot? He might have actually been shot on April, what is tax day? April 16th, April 15th, whatever it is. It might not have been tax day back then.
So, yeah. Yeah, but that turns out that is
April
also
he was shot on the 14th.
Titanic.
Okay.
Same day as the Titanic. This is totally ritual trauma day. It's also on the other side as John the Baptist loses his head on the other side of the Analema. So they're always going for the throat, the isthmus.
That makes sense. And, you know, it's supposed to be about the birth of the year. And they're making that time the season of sacrifice, as it's called, about death. It's always like that. Like when they put just last year on the winter solstice, when the sun is at its low point, they allegedly sent some doggy coin to the moon. And then, but earlier in the year on the summer solstice, when the sun's at its high point, they did the whole spell of like the deep underwater submarine Titanic bullshit. So sun's at its height, they're putting human awareness down at the lowest point. Sun's at its lowest point, they're trying to put human awareness up at the highest point. It's always this weird inversion, which is why I'm so highly distrustful of the inversion of the zodiac order, putting Capricorn on top and Cancer on bottom of the Thoth sun card. Or who knows who's inverting what? It's the circles, right? But it's all worth thinking about.
I got a little. Yeah, I got a little on that. I think it's encoding the tribe of Dan. Tribe of Dan is said to have pursued the shellfish. They were so selfish that they wandered off the menu of what was allowed with the camp that stayed behind, the two tribes that stayed loyal. And the tribe of Dan went chasing along the seashore, following the shellfish. And so that actually plays into the Procyon. Turns out there's two types of raccoons, and one is literally, his name is a pre-dog who's washing crabs, is one of the types of raccoons. So the aquatic ape theory is right here with these children having crabs at their feet. All right.
I could say more about that, but for brevity's sake, we're just going to keep going. The Koph, the letter Koph, the meaning ape and serpent. But what we see now here is Renslayer gets beckoned into this barn with Miss Minutes. Now, in this episode, if you go back and rewatch it, you're going to notice that they're going through these doorways, but they're like double doors or gates. that are more square shaped rather than like a traditional rectangular door. So the shape of the hay, you see that constantly in this episode, going through arches and doorways like this. Almost every scene begins with something like that, establishing it, or it's somewhere in the scene. Maybe every scene. I don't know, but it's there. So that's like the shape of the letter hay. There's hay in the barn, like duh, straw. And they're seeking the God Messiah, Yahweh Mashiach. They're seeking him in this scene. And in the mythos, of course, the Messiah is born in a manger, whether it's Krishna or Christ or etc., with goats. So here's the goat in the manger, the very space where Miss Minutes and Renslayer are going to hatch their plot to give birth to their Messiah by altering his future. And you could even kind of consider that in this metaphor that Miss Minutes, who is luminous, is akin to the star of Bethlehem, that three wise people are Renslayer, Mobius, and Loki, and they're following, they're all chasing Miss Minutes in this episode. At least that's what starts it all off. And it's all ends up to being a race or a rash or a rash to find the Messiah. And you notice too how nativity scenes often have this shape of the letter hay with the manger just being a little, a roof basically with no walls. It's very letter hay like. I couldn't ignore that. Born in a manger. And without this little moment where they're hatching their plot and he's just a few feet away from them across a wall, he's born in a manger. It's for sure. Horus was also born in a stable. Thank you, Booty Yoga. I don't have a receipt for that, but I believe you. Lots of them are. It's a common motif. It has to do with, back to the Cancer being on top of the zodiac thing, it has to do with the stellar tableau going on in the sky at that time. That the solar child is symbolized by Leo, of course, and the star Regulus, which we've talked about this with John McHugh before when we've gone into deep. Go look up InnerVerse with John McHugh, and he goes full on about the stellar mythos of the Jesus's nativity scene. But that the Babylonian Sumerian name for the star Regulus contains in all of its punning the idea of the child king. It's a Tupsharu. So it's even got that sar, which is resh backwards in the word. So getting off track, but there's a lot. There's so much here. And the stable is part of the Cancer constellation. It's one of the asterisms in Cancer. Dylan points out, cleaning the Aegean stable was the fifth labor of Hercules. Definitely. That's also accurate. Now, the plan that they're hatching is to put this package in that window. The word hay can be used to refer to a window. And the value of hay, 5, also corresponds to the word ad, the root for Adam. But ad, Aleph Dalet, can mean to envelop, like this package in its envelope. And it's really more of a word about mists or vapors, like fogs, that conceal or obscure something. But in a poetic sense, I think this envelope can apply. And because, it's maybe a little felt more like a stretch to be talking about concealing and enveloping or hiding things coming from this word ad. Although I believe it's there. I kind of left it out of some other slides, but there's a ton of hiding and concealing going on in this episode. Mostly the characters hiding and concealing from each other, but it's totally there. And what's going on is she finds out that, or Renslayer finds out that the person who came up with this plan to put this package in the window was the ascended, ancient he who remains himself. So it's definitely an oroboros thing. He's like creating himself. And I think that the he who remains character is really profoundly reminiscent of the the myth of the future king, or I'm sorry, the myth of the Fisher King. That's King Arthur as well. He's the once and future Kang. He totally is. Just like the King Arthur mythos, Ar is even a word that gets you back to the lion of it all. Arya, Hebrew word for lion. But the myth of the Fisher King goes something like this. It's an old Celtic myth. In a boat on a lonely lake sits the Fisher King, impotent guardian of the mystery and of a wasteland made barren by a wound from his own spear. In the distance, his castle shrouded in mist, where strange enchantments await the fool, disguised as night, to ask the question of the mystery and to begin again a new turning of life. So there's a lot of versions of the Fisher King myth, but essentially the Fisher King is wounded by his own spear, allegorically, allegorically to the wounding by his own spear is how the future version of Kang, or He Who Remains, is killed by a wound that he suffers from Sylvie, who in a way is his own weapon because he created all the conditions for her to exist and laid the path out for Loki and Sylvie to find him. Also, just like the myth of the Fisher King, Kang's castle is shrouded in mist. That was the big smoke monster, Eliath. They had to go through that shroud of mist to get to his castle. And Loki, as the fool, asks the question of the mystery. He's the one that's asking questions. Sylvie's just there to kill him. She's more of a weapon. And the death of He Who Remains at the end of season 1, that begins a new turning of life, a new cycle where he can become a young and fertile Kang once again. Also relevant is that the Fisher King is the last guardian of the Holy Grail. And in this metaphor, as it shows up in the episode, near the end of the episode, it's his device called the throughput multiplier, which is needed to restore the TVA to working order. We'll cover that in part 2 more carefully, but it happens to look a lot like a grail in its shape, and he holds it up like, ah. And of course, Jesus is a version of the Fisher King. His symbol is the fish. And before Christians were called Christians, they were the Pishikuli, meaning the little fishes. There's a lot to it. The wound by the spear, that's Odin. Same as Balder being wounded by the mistletoe. Balder even comes up in this episode, in case we weren't thinking about the Fisher King. It's just the same story over and over again. Here's some artwork of the Fisher King. Looks just like Heracles. I don't know where this art comes from. It's not ancient, so it's not like a confirmation of anything, but I like that image. So, Gabe, you got anything before we move forward?
Yeah, man, this is so rich. It's so rich. Like, when you said the star card, it's just now hitting me that the glyph on the star card is window. It means window. And I just shot you an image that one of my reads on the star card, because of this triggering aspect of the leap year, and the fact that I'm putting her in this position, this back handspring position, this is a linchpin maneuver. When you do this Makaku backflip, there's no going back. Once you got to commit when you do the backflip. There's no half-ass in the backflip. So it's very much like a grenade. And so the spring, the primer, the striker, these are ingredients of the hand grenade. And so the symbol of the window, she's about to throw this book in the window and run. So it has kind of a trick or treat. He's inseminating his own inception. He's inseminating his own inception by having her. He's influencing her to pass the information to himself at a younger age. But I
She's
just wanted to
also,
bring the hand
in this
grenade
metaphor,
into the picture.
She's the mother. She's like his mother because she's creating him, but who also wants to be his lover. It's the Kybel and Addis. It's that whole thing. It's really obvious, actually. She wants to be his lover, and she created him. Both of the Miss Minutes and Renslayer share that attribute.
So I want to mention Adonis has come up a couple times. The number 8 is a hedonist. The word hedonist has the word Adonis. You just drop that, make the 8 silent. It's an hedonist. So the hedonist has the Adonai insemination mythos required. So yeah, this fact that she's throwing this trigger to spark off events. And she's on, by the way, did we mention this is the sacred timeline? We're now on like a timeline that is must be preserved. They can't just trim this and try to reset it. This is actually sacred timeline now. And so the nature of this land that they're on in the story cannot be edited. And that's why the aspect of rewriting history is going to be really important. And let's not miss the fact that when Carlson, trucker, uh, the trucker Carlson alarm system was talking to Vladimir Putin about history. They were talking about how important history is. And here we just, for 2 years, have been watching Loki, where they're talking about cutting off sacred timelines. And everybody's upset about Tartaria and Mudflood and the muddle ages, the muddy ages, the Middle Ages, and all of the arguing over whose daddy inseminated whose thoughts with their book of life. So, one more point here is the ISS is a 911. And right now, they're going to try to convince people that that the sky is falling. In the map of it, if you look at the picture of all the debris that's floating on helium balloons, hot air balloons, satelloons, it looks like the entire planet Earth is one big coronavirus. And if all these satellites start poking us like a pincushion, it's going to fulfill the prophecy that people already thought existed when the sea urchin emergency popped off. So, yeah, I just wanted to put the continuation of government in the linchpin maneuver of the backhand spring of Terpsichore, whose name is basically Tulsi Gabbard. Terpsichore and Tulsi Gabbard are basically the same name. Tulsi in reverse is lusty, and this card was in the lust position, number 8. And now it's going to the center stage.
I don't have any. I don't even know. I like that ISS is 9/11 though. Okay. This is a great graphic.
Dropping bombs.
People ought to go check out. Join our Telegram groups.
Bombs.
Join our Telegram groups and you can get access to all of Gabe's amazing graphics that they're like a journey in and of themselves. COG, continuity of government, the real mafia. That is accurate. Rand, thank you for that awesome super chat. Really appreciate the support. You guys out there, feel free to super chat Gabe through Cash App as well. His Cash App is $Slick Dissident. And here we go back into my slides. All right. So yeah, the Fisher King, covered that real well. Now, Miss Minutes is sort of chastised for being too out in the open by Renslayer. And so even though this is just goofy, there's no way this actually makes her more incognito. But she becomes, as the Holy Ghost, she becomes even more ghost-like as she does a 19th century costume change to be a Disneyfied, even more Disneyfied, like Steamboat Willie, black and white version of herself. Just silly. But, it's back to she wants to blend in. So it's back to that idea of concealment that is kind of hidden in the AD, Aleph Dalet, the number 5. And I got to get my things all organized so I can change slides. Here we go. All right. I messed with my monitors and everything's a little different. Here we go. So at this point, we have Renslayer and Ms. Minutes are outside of the window of the, as of right now, dead Osiris. He's dead because he's not on track to be reborn as himself in his full godly, he who remains glory, right? So this is the two Marys outside of the tomb of Jesus. The goddesses that create Adam, Alaim. This is the Isis and Nephthys on the sides of the dead Osiris. I totally see this. I'm sure about this. That's who they are. They're the ones that are here. They're here to resurrect him. Just like Mary and Mary waiting for Jesus to resurrect, or Isis and Nephthys. It's all there. This is just a key component of the mythos, the two goddesses with the resurrection of the god. And they both are in love with them too.
Totally.
Isis and Nephthys totally both want to get it on with with Jesus. And if you carry that metaphor over to Mary and Mary, you've got, no one ever like thinks it's strange that Jesus' mom is also the name of his lover. It's exactly the same as Kybele and Attis. It's the goddess that wants to bang her son, and her son's also her father. And it's so weird. Or Martha and Mary with Lazarus. Yeah, good one.
Totally. Nice, nice. Yes, one thing about the incest is it is it's clearly preserving pharaonic lines. And the fact that Sigmund Freud was made his career studying incest actually tells you where the money is in in the world of psychology, and that is that these pharaonic lines are still making moves on the very high orders. So some of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung's battles of conscience had to do with the fact that only rich people could afford their help. And therefore, they were looking at rich people's problems. And those rich people's problems got a lot of incest baked into it. And those guys were sitting on a ton of secrets that they took to their grave. So these incest practices, and even Einstein, man, relativity,
I
he
think
ended
that's
up
just
with his
mockery.
niece. Einstein ended up with his niece. So these guys, yeah, they got to keep it. I think accelerationism, yeah, that's part of the accelerationist thing. But one other point is the virgin on one side and the not so much virgin on the other, and the word window. This is also encode for women to know when it's good to go and when it's not. So the window of fertility needs to be immortalized, and for the ladies' sake. And guys should probably know about what that window means too.
Right. That's also part of the knowledge of cycles. It's a good point. Okay. So this okay, so now we finally see the child version of Kang, of Victor Timely. He is the light of the world. He's the sun, but he's just a child still, so his light is only small. Thus, of course, he's a candle maker. Here he is making candles because he's the light of the world. Like, it's so direct of the metaphor. The threads of candlewick on this loom type of thing next to him, that's foreshadowing his later creation of the temporal loom, and also relates to one of the meanings of the word hay being thread. And his being black is, of course, because the original solar deity archetype is black, whether it's Osiris, who's colored black, or Krishna, a name that means black, or the Italian Black Madonna and Child, which was extant in Italy well before the time given to the birth of Jesus Christ. Jesus is the black god as well. It's not really about race, rash. It's not really about race. It's about the origin of light being in darkness. It's about order arising from chaos, or the unknown or the unconscious proceeding the known or the conscious. But me and Jennifer were just like, oh my God, he's making candles? I totally forgot that detail until we rewatched it. But immediately I was like, yes, the sun card. He is the light. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Big time. Just couldn't have been anything else. And then the breeze blows in the window, and that's what alerts him to the transformative book that Renslayer dropped through the window. So the breeze in the window is the divine wind. Later in the episode, they actually call it the divine hand, and a divine hand that gives him the book. This moment is the oroboros termination and beginning point. This is the spring equinox point. This is the birth point. And from this point on, the timeline that this child is on is now a variant branch. It's not the sacred timeline anymore. It was the sacred timeline. Now he's a variant. He is Kronos. He is the sun and keeper of time, as the sun measures out the seasons and the cycles of time. He is Liber Pater, the father of the book, and the book is his father. That's a mind bender. Considering, though, that it teaches and instructs him on who he's going to become. The book is he is the book, and the book is him. And here you see Liber Pater, an old Grecian illustration, and he's got the horn, the KRN. That's the same exact phonetics as Kronos. George, what's up, George? Welcome. Thank you for the thank you. Good stuff.
Nice. So I got to point out the veil at the window. The thin sheen of the curtain. Uh, Very much uh, kind of harmonizes with the Machiavelli uh, insinuation. I see Machiavelli often because I'm studying him actively, but that's also another crucial writing that if you wanted to inform somebody or give them a more expansive worldview back in the days, Machiavelli would have been, uh, yeah, very innovative, very innovative. So just the fact that the veil is implied is very interesting.
Oh yeah, he's seeing through the veil of Maya, because who came through the veil was Mary, metaphorically. Maya, Mary, same deal. That's great. And oh, okay, Dylan's dropping all kinds of fire in the chat. First, he mentions Surtur, the Norse god Surtur, which is the one that brings the end times and the darkness and the fire. You know, he's like a hellish guy in the Norse. And then Shuri or Suri, which is the Hades underworld wolf god of the Etruscans. Both of those are Sur, which is Resh backwards. And then he says Acts 21, or no, Acts 2, verses 1 through 4, if you want to read it to demonstrate the relationship between the Heli Gust and the Surakos. Yeah, why not? Acts, I'm sure that's worth it. Acts 2, 1 through 4. All right. When
That
the
kind
day
of
of
that
Pentecost
rhymes with
came,
Socrates. Go ahead.
okay. The when the day of Pentecost came, they were Penta, that's 5, like hey. When the day of Pentecost came, they were all together in one place. Suddenly, a sound like the blowing of a violent wind came from heaven and filled the whole house where they were sitting. They saw what seemed to be the tongues of fire that separated and came to rest on each of them. And all of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other tongues as the Spirit enabled them. Oh man. And that's the NIV version. I'm gonna save that.
Wow.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, Holocaust. This
So
episode
that
is about a
rhymes.
Holocaust. See,
That
Holocaust is
chapter
Holy
rhymes with
Ghost.
Socrates summoning. Yes, yes. Socrates summons Diotima Mantinea, and he does belly talking. He does ventriloquism. He does a holy gust, and he talks so much that he goes into the night and talks people to sleep. In fact, and enchants them to such a degree. So yeah, that ventriloquism aspect of the number 7 uh, and the windbag of it all, chance we found that there once was a hot air balloon constellation. And I believe that that has been invoked many times. And in fact, I'm even inclined to believe that Odysseus, when he has the holy zephyr wind gifted to him, and he goes back on his way and he's supposed to have all the lucky winds trapped, and some of his soldiers are like, "What's in this bag, yo?" And they pop it open and they let the winds get out, and it ruins the plan. He has to go back to the king. The king is like, "Nah, man, you fucked up when on the first try." Chance, there's a perfectly good potential for that to actually been hot air balloon technology. The potential of hot air balloon technology in Odysseus is right there staring us in the face. So yeah, Saturloons may be way older than you thought.
Well, you realize that that's actually coming up in a little bit in this episode, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
buddy. There's so many things about the epics that need to be completely reconsidered with the new technology because it's so simple. It's just simple. It's controlled technology.
Well, allegedly, hydrogen was what they used in the hot air balloons at the World's Fair in Chicago in 1893. Not hot air, it was hydrogen. And they were getting hydrogen by applying electric current to water, aka electrolysis, which electrolysis is such a huge rabbit hole esoterically that might be insanely important around like how the earth grows and is formed. It's beyond the scope of talking about right now, but to say, hey, we've discovered batteries and stuff from way, way, way back in the ancient world, the Baghdad battery, for example. So there's your electricity. All you got to do to get hydrogen is apply an electric current to water in the right way, and boom, you've got the, you've got levity. And so what you're saying is not that far out, dude. Hot air, not hot air balloons, but hydrogen balloons is totally plausible at any time in history because batteries do not require any kind of major manufacturing capabilities to make. It could be done. It's not out of the question. It's so crazy.
Buddy. Yep.
And not even Sarah Lath makes a good point. Not even a hot air balloon is that hard of a tech. Anyone with a blanket and a large fire could do it. Yeah, you're probably right about that. Wow.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. Let's not miss the point that it's Baghdad, baddery, that it's in the word. Let's not miss that the name of the place it came from has the baddery in it. Let's also mention that hydrogen is the pinnacle of one of the Jachin and Boaz. Hydrogen is actually the origin of Mercury's name, the H to the G. This is the OG first and foremost. And so when we have all these saints pointing to the heavens, that signifies like oneness of thought, or we are all in agreement, or my vote is yes. But it's also big up to the high dragon. Big up to the high dragon. Yeah, buddy. The OGHG right there. All right. Power,
All right.
power.
Yeah, number one champion of the periodic table. And a mate, like back to the Helios of it, hydrogen, water, hydro, has a lot of healing, Helios, the sun, power, potency, 100%. Dylan says TVA is also Deva, which is a word for God. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Good stuff. I love you guys in the chat. You make this so much more fun. That's why I leave the whole thing free. Even though I really should be doing some paywall content lately, but I have so much fun with these Loki shows. I'm kind of obsessed with it. So now we've cut over to the TVA, speaking of the Devas, and we see that back at the TVA, the temporal meltdown is imminent. The destruction of the universe is imminent. That's why it's so important that they find the regeneration of the cycle with finding he who remains, because it's at the destruction point back over here. The crew, Casey, Oroboros, Loki, Mobius, B-15, they're all comparing their notes on the situation, and they realize they can't access the temporal loom, which they need to stop from melting down, without having the aura being wind, of the man who created it, the spirit of the man who created it, aka he who remains. On the genocides and population control of the end of the last episode, where General Dox pruned most of the multiverse branches, did buy them some time, but the branches are all growing back, so the meltdown is definitely going to happen. Then we talk about how they need to scale the loom's capacity to manage all of these new branches. Well, hey, the word for a branch in Hebrew does have a solar connection. It equals 200. It's ayin nun pei equals 200. That's fun, like resh. And the window, there's your hay, is fenced off. That also means hay, by blast doors, and that restricts them from getting to the loom. And the loom is struggling to thread hay, all of the branches, resh. So just like right here in this little moment, it's like, hey, resh, hey, resh. All these words, all these meanings of those two words showing up big time in the scene. Then they decide that, what about Miss Minutes? Can she open up access to the loom? They decide that she can open this up for them because she has administrator access to all time and space and to the TVA systems. But the question is, how do we find her? She's gone AWOL. She's a little rogue cartoon clock that doesn't want to be found. So they decide if they can find Renslayer, they can find the little cartoon clock. And then the last episode at the end, once all the branches were destroyed, they had narrowed down their search because of that. So they were able to do cell phone tracing on government surveillance on the tempad of Renslayer using their tracking technology. And they're hoping that Renslayer will be able to get Miss Minutes for them, and because their tracking shows that the two have been in contact. So we're now jumping away from this scene, and we're going to back to Chicago. And what do you know? The next shot establishes the Kabbalah again, the Black Horse, Kabbalahs. Just like the last time that we opened in Chicago, 1868. We're back in Chicago, 1868. First thing they show us is a horse. Like, it's the beginning of the transmission. It's the beginning of the Kabbalah, the Kabbalahs. It couldn't be more, intentional, it feels like. Why else would you put the horse right there at the beginning? Twice. Not once, but twice. And now Mobius and Loki arrive, and they're wearing hats, which I don't think they've ever done before, unless you count Loki's horns. So the hats are calling attention to their rash, their heads. They're seeking wisdom, which is Ras or Resh, from the goddesses of creation, Renslayer and Miss Minutes. Interestingly, in this shot, you see a 157 above Loki's head. I think that's a reference to the setting sun, because they're in the next scene, they're going to be hanging out till the sun sets. It's going to be night, and night has importance. We'll talk about more in part 2, relating to chaos that needs ordering. But also, who are they chasing after? They're chasing after the female goddesses, the two Marys, the Yoni, the generative power. That's a 157. Nun, Kaf, Bet, Hey. 157. And it's referring to the power, the female generative power in its hollowness. Because like the letter Hey has a cavitation or hollowness that gives it its power, the exhale of Hey empties out, hollows out the vessel of the body or the lungs or the windbag, all of that. And then notice as they're passing by, there's these planks here. Okay, go ahead. I'll save the planks.
Well, I was just going to mention that 157 is the 37th prime number. So there's our Mason-Dixon and our 37, which is crucial. Kirchhoff's law of the 7 and the 3, sacred 37, and you divide it in half and you get the lunar standstill cycle. It's a 37. That's a bingo bango.
Nice. That's a good one, because she's they're looking for the ones who have the secrets, the high priestesses, in a way. They're chasing after some priestesses, which the priestess is the letter Bet, right? No, it's Gimel. Gimel. And Gimel is a 73, but 73 is the 21st prime. You flip it, 37 is the 12th prime. So whenever you talk about 37, you're talking about 73. 157 being the 73rd prime is bringing us back to the Gimel. I know it's very mathy, but it's all consistent because they're chasing after a priestess, and 157 also is referring to that feminine generative power. And Dylan says, did you guys ever address Renslayer as the Ren Slayer? That is the slayer of the songbird, god of silence, Harpocrates, etc. I didn't bring it up like that, but I did. We have talked about Ren as the Egyptian word for the name, the body or layer of the self that is given life by having a name, a unique name, because that's part of the legal sorcery of it all. And the TVA is this giant universal bureaucracy, and their control. Renslayer is controlling people by their name. And she does that shows up a lot more in season 1, but it's totally a thing. Now, looky here at these planks. I'm going to explain why these planks are here in the next slide. So there's a lot going on here. Okay. As they enter the scene, Mobius comments on Chicago 1868 to the same spot in 1893. That's the 2 hits they got on their cell phone tracking. 1868 to 1893. There are other ways to mix up these numbers that give good clues, but the first way that I think is most relevant is multiplying them out. 1868 multiplied out becomes 384. 1893 multiplied out, 216. Let's add it together. 216 plus 384 is 600. Ding, ding, ding. Now, you've maybe heard of the religious doctrine that claims the Earth to be less than 6,000 years old. The Hebrew calendar currently is set at the year 5784. This is all part of this ancient idea where anciently there is thought to be a cycle of time in which the Christ or Messiah, the reincarnation of Adam, the firstborn of the first cause, protagonos, would appear every 600 years, is what it was thought. So at this interval of time, the priests would look for a figure who they thought might be this being, this reincarnation. This cycle is called the Neros cycle, and Nero is Greek for water. It's the water cycle. There would be some fudging by the priests of this 600 number, like other versions of it would be 608 or 650, occasionally other amounts, because the system kept being revised to try to make it fit reality. And without getting lost in the sauce on this, just trust me that this is a thing. An example of this is, like the most recent example, I think, is how there are 600 years roughly between Jesus and Mohammed. Islam was another of these Nero's cycle reboots. And I suspect maybe, I don't know, but if it was me and I was the people originating this system way back in the day, smart enough to come up with the whole astrology and navigation by stars and etc., maybe the whole idea of the reboots was so that people wouldn't have as much idolatry. They could sort of cut everything back down to the bare basics of the system with a new version of the deity and start over, kind of like reboot every 600 years. But as time went on, it just became a way to totally grabble. Like Alexander the Great, he was like, every time you get one of these divine god king emperors, they're said to be an incarnation of the protagonos, son of God. Anybody that's getting called son of God with a divine immaculate conception. So anyway, this is exactly what's going on in this episode. They are searching for the reincarnated God Messiah, except instead of calling it an incarnation, they're just calling him a variant. But it's the same thing, because incarnations of the same being are variants of the same being. And they also just walked past some boards and some planks, which in Hebrew, the word for that equals 600, kaf resh shin. So, just in case it was looking like I might have been stretching a little bit the imagination to come up with this idea that the difference between these 2 years is encoding 600 and we're searching for an incarnation. Well, we just happened to walk by some boards and planks that equal 600. So the allegory is doubled up in the imagery of this scene, making it very clear to me that we're meant to be thinking this way, or that it's here. Whether or not intentional, it's totally here. There are said to be 10 cycles before the destruction and renovation of the world. So the world ending at the year 6000 in the Hebrew calendar is an indication of 10 cycles of 600. In the microcosm, the 600-year cycle would destroy and renovate aspects of society. And in the macro cycle, the entire world would be destroyed and renovated in 6,000 years. And the wheel we see frequently in this episode, and really throughout this series, totally illustrates the cycle and also fits with the value of Hey being 5 through the word GD, or Gimel Dalet. That's GD, like God, the rim of the wheel. It also means, that word also means an arch or a support. GD, God, is supported by the arch of the heaven. And this, just like the sun rides on the wheel of the zodiac. Okay, I'll stop now.
Good Lord, it just keeps going, doesn't it? It's so self-confirming. It's amazing. I'm going to keep cavitating a little more. Um, so the X is the 24th letter in English. 2 plus 4 makes it a 6. And also, so the 6 is also signified here in a powerful way. But this is like signing X on the dotted line. This is totally the mechanics of the axial arrangement. That's fascinating what you just said, Chance, about the 10 into the times the 600 on the micro to the macro, the cavitating of it. Can you bring up, we'll just flash through the series that I sent you, starting with the most recent, and we'll just go backwards really fast. Because you mentioned they're looking for a Messiah. Here in a minute, the impact of finding what they're looking for is, I found it emotionally overdone. Uh, but if you know the history of the symbol that they're fulfilling, then when Loki sees what he's looking for, his reaction is justified. This 10 card is knowingly seeded into people's knee-jerk reaction around Satan. And this is like a lamed or an ox goad or a cracking of a whip, that they're going to stimulate the minds of people with things that are evil to scare them back to work. So Blake's Dark Satanic Mills is a secret national anthem of the UK. And so this is signifying, um, Karl Marx was writing his manifesto in the city of London when he made Marxists, the Marxists, has much to do with mercantilism and the murex of the Phoenician purple of the high priests. And then can you just flip to the next one? I'm just going to rant through real quick to emotionally charge what you're saying about these signs and the symbols in the alleyway. Um, and real quick, Aleister Crowley has a very famous story where he's walking down the street and one of his buddies on the street is like, do some magic right now, no preparation. And Aleister's like, all right, let me see. And he switches hats and he starts walking in the footprints of a guy 5 steps ahead of him. And he starts emulating the guy's stride exactly. And on the 5th step, Crowley, the guy doesn't know Crowley's behind him, and Crowley falls down to one knee on the 5th step. And the next step the guy takes, he does the exact same fall as Crowley. So the fact that they're walking around with 2 different hats, like a round hat and a square hat, it's kind of interesting. There might be some the difference between a tecton and a tent maker, John the Baptist and Jesus. Jesus was a temple maker. John the Baptist was a tent maker. That's the square versus the circle with their hats. But can you pull up the next one? Just we could just flash really quickly through. This is why 10 is Satan, 1,000 different ways. But also, Pope Innocent the Tenth was immortalized by an artist who I think is copying this card. I think this is copycat artwork. But Innocent the Tenth, this is a painting of him, but done in the motif of the Thoth deck. And also, uh, there was a shootout with the Untouchables. And during the Untouchables, there was a cart, a baby carriage going down these steps while the gangsters are shooting at each other. And so some of the Wild Wild West motif and the fact that they're in the alleyways dressed like this and they keep summoning tension over the 10 being shown, the 10 shown is building. So I just wanted to signify that they do this in art uh, intentionally. This is intentional buildup. You can fly on through. Battleship Potemkin had a scene just like the Untouchables, where the X was building tension.
You know,
Okay, yeah, and
this is
here, this is what they're looking. Yeah, what do you think?
well, it's totally random, but this makes me think of, I don't know, you're probably not a big gamer, maybe you are, but there's this game series called Kingdom Hearts where Disney and this Japanese game developer merged their franchises essentially, and they combined all of the Final Fantasy game series characters with all the Disney characters and made one big multiverse out of it and whatever. Long story. Tons of esotericism in that. And the overarching villain of that series, as I recall, is called Sa-Ix or Sa-Ix. So it's Say, S-A-I, like Satan, but X instead of 10. Say X. And he has a big scar on his head that's in the shape of an X, the 10. And he's got, before he became the villain, Satan or Say X, he was a boy who was good named Isa, which is the root of Jesus and words for savior. So That's the side subject. George would love that. Yorgo would love to hear me break that down. I know he loves to get into the esoteric video game gravy, and Final Fantasy stuff is just full of it. But man, yeah, that's just random. That's what it made me think of.
Nice. I just got on a video game kick myself today. I started some graphics on along that line. We'll share soon. But I just wanted to kind of substantiate that they're looking for this certain imprint. They need this aura, and the profile of Victor Timely. Strangely enough, there was a word in Hitler's Mein Kampf. He was looking for the ideal Flichterfluling, Victorflugen, which is so close to Victor Timely's name. It's so close when you just pronounce it instead of spelling it. But sure enough, Victor Timely's comic book character was doing like a Hail Hitler sign in his defining moment. Um, and science advances one funeral at a time. Uh, but then so the spirit of Victor Flugen is giving everything to the service of the community, and the community will. And so here's the wheel of the will of the collective of getting the homunculus to respond to your whatever your manipulations, the fundamental spirit of which this kind of activity springs. There's that word spring. Star cards doing the backhand spring, right? It's literally the Eridanus River is a spring that pours out from the Hierophant or Taurus's feet down into the backwards across the zodiac. Who's the kind of activity spring is the contradistinction of egoism. So this is interesting
And we call
because
it idealism. Sorry, I took that down
yeah,
before you were going to
because
read it.
Victor Timely is the other in no, yeah, yeah. Something really fascinating about the fact that they're looking for another Hitler, basically. And this Victor Timely is like going to be the Black Hitler, but people won't see it that way because he's black, so it can't be the Black Hitler. But yeah, it's a new day and age, right? Xeno Scientologists got their black Xeno Hitler. That might be in the wings.
Jenny says comic book Timely definitely looks more like Tesla. It's a really good point. And there's a recent movie about the Chicago World's Fair, the rash to light the world. We'll talk about that a little bit as we go forward too. It's a pretty recent movie. And what you're bringing up the will with this word, Flichterfulung, the will, and it's the communal will, right? It's something like that. It's like the will of the crowd versus the consideration of one's own individual interests. Well, ain't that the theme of this episode? You nail it here, because later on, we'll talk about it more in part 2, but there's this question of like, should we save Victor Timely? I mean, we need him to save us, but does that mean we just got our free will back, right? We just got free will because the old king is dead, so we can do what we want. But are we trying to put in a new king and set it all up exactly like it was before and give up our free will? And what is the will center of the body? It's the solar plexus. That's the will, big time. So, and what is and Victor Timely? He's a confidence trickster. He's a con man, and the other attribute of the solar plexus is your confidence. It's totally about self-esteem. A little different than self-worth, but it's about confidence. So, all of this stuff is very present in the episode. Like, we're doing our best I'm doing my best mainly to get the stuff that is not so obvious, and we probably leave out a lot of stuff that would be obvious. But that's for you to discover, because we're already going to be on a long time frame to talk about the not so obvious stuff, but that's the fun stuff. So okay, getting back to slides. Here we go. We see them, Loki and Mobius. They are stopping at that prominent window. Hey, it's the same window as where the Solar Child received the book. They also make sure that we are thinking about major pivot points in history, like wheels and wills move on a pivot. And they mentioned the Great Chicago Fire. Any major figures arise from here? No. I mean, you had the Great Chicago Fire, but that's 1871. So just in case you didn't know, the Great Chicago Fire is in between these two points in the timeline. And then they jump. Oh, go ahead. You got something, Gabe?
Grant, the actor's name is Major. John Major.
He's a major
And he's
figure.
right
Good
behind that
point,
window.
Jonathan Majors.
Totally. That's something else. That is really something else. And then I just have to remind people, Joe Biden's dog is named Commander. And there's a side weave that we haven't really expanded on. We just left it. It's like needs to be picked back up about all the president's dogs are actually encoding drug lords. And so their dogs' names are inside jokes to the drug industries. And there's and other things. It's not always a drug lord, but there's like two of them are a drug lord. One of the Bush dogs was its name was Sully, and that was the guy who landed the airplane. So it's almost like he's absolving the Bush family from the airplanes that didn't survive by naming their dog Sully. It's weird. It's weird. So yeah, names of presidents' dogs are all encoded to the max.
Speaking of Jonathan Majors, I don't know what's going on with this legal case, but the most recent headlines say that his sentencing is getting postponed. I also see that his current girlfriend is supportive of him, quote unquote, going through his legal battles for his domestic abuse, allegedly. Her name is Megan Good. So if you make the G in Megan a Y, you got Mayan God. Goddess Maya. I think that's funny. So now we do a time jump. They walk through a time door and they're in the World's Fair all of a sudden. And Loki's like, this can't be the same place. He's rightly exclaiming, this can't be the same place. Kind of poking fun at how difficult it is to believe in the official historical narrative of the sacred timeline of the real world regarding the World's Fairs being constructed in less than a year and then totally torn down. Like, what? That's so bizarre. So this is the Midway Pleissance. And basically that's encoding the midwife placenta because this is the time and place where the midwifery or the birth of the Messiah God is delivered. Pleissance is a French word. It means desire or pleasure in Old French. Lots of places are named Pleissance where French people settled, including some variations like in Newfoundland in Canada where there's a town called Placentia. It's a real place. We also see there on a street, a wide open street, the Midway, and that word is a 216, encoding the year they just came into. That's Resh, Chet, Vav, Bet. And we also see the rim of the wheel that I was mentioning, the Ferris wheel, and then the arch that I just described relating to the Hebrew word Gimel Dalet, GD, equal to the letter 5, like the letter Hey. And this arch has shields upon it, which are esoterically a symbol of the solar disk, because the sun is a shield shape in the sky. And that's always been a solar symbol. They're not round shields, but it's still shields on an arch, which is like degrees of the zodiac. Rather than zodiac signs or constellations, is like specific degrees. It's more incremental. This is maybe in part 2, if there's time, we'll talk more about this Arch de Triomphe. They do call it that in the real historical timeline. And the triumph is the triple stone, the triumphalos. So it's always been a solar savior thing. The yo triumphe. That's what the Romans would exclaim to praise Jove or Jehovah. Yo triumphe. Now, so there's 100. This is 100% a placenta thing. This Pleissance word. If you were playing placenta bingo, it's at 1 hour 48 minutes is when we got there, something like that. Now here we see Mobius. He's like, no, this is really the same place. The White City, Edison, H. Holmes. Yes, hot air balloons. Oh boy. The first of all, we already kind of got into the hot air balloons, so I'm cool to kind of jump past that. The hydrogen powered hot air balloons, they're not actually hot air at this time, it's hydrogen, even, which to me is like more advanced than using fire and hot air. But this H. Holmes guy, oh boy. He's a con artist, a confidence trickster, if you will, and a serial killer and a wealthy guy active in Chicago at this time. The crazy thing here is that the press at the time of his capture claimed that he'd killed up to 200 people. 200 is the value of the rash, the sun. And his name, H. Holmes. Hey, triple hey. And I'll talk a little more about Holmes because he's going to come up again in the episode. But damn, that's quite a character. Now, the World's Fair of 1893 was called the Columbian Exposition. Columbia is a word referring to heaven and the dove, the latter being a very significant symbol in this series, albeit an occulted one. It's, the holm tree, the holm oak that Odin hangs on. H. Holmes. Good call, Dylan. Good call. But anyway, we've discussed the dove aspect in previous episodes. Beyond the scope of our analysis tonight, to really get into the nitty gritty about the World's Fair and the many chronological inconsistencies and illogicalities that it presents to us. And I'm not qualified to make a definitive statement one way or the other, but it is worth looking into for anyone that hasn't done so. For example, this show, Loki, actually sidesteps depicting any of the big white stone buildings or the giant golden, quote, Statue of the Republic. This statue that you see in the left picture, huge statue, it was ordered to be destroyed by fire after the fair, just like all the rest of these buildings that were this grand, awesome looking architecture, supposedly built in a year and destroyed right after the fair. It's hard to believe. The image on the right is a 1/3 scale replica made 25 years later. So that's kind of interesting because 25 years before 1868 and 25 years after 1868 is 1893. 25 years after that is 1918 when they unveil this replica. Now, the right hand of the statue holds a globe with an eagle perched on it. The other hand has a staff with a plaque that reads Liberty. The original version had a Phrygian cap on the top of the staff. It's really quite insane to consider that all this was so easily created and destroyed. But more importantly, the sacred timeline, as in the mythos of the history of America, what America is, where it came from, the revolution, the story of how it is settled, westward expansion and all that. Consider how this is a mythos, because really all we have of that is stories. Like, the records are not the best records we have is pretty much writing. And when you compare the physical evidence to the narrative, there's a lot of problems, like especially the West Coast, like San Francisco, where there's also a World's Fair. It will just leave it at saying it appears that there were already big white stone buildings and big elaborate cities with the Greco-Roman columns and architectural style that were already here in North America, that were then just founded, as in found, rather than built. And some of it was done away with, that maybe needed to be done away with to keep the regular common folk in the belief system that was handed to them in the World's Fairs. And why I say the World's Fairs were important to the founding of the mythos of the history of America is because there were like textbooks written of American history for the first time, and they were disseminated at the World's Fairs. And on top of that, you had all these exhibits of different races or rashes of this is what black people are like, where they come from. This is Africans. This is Norwegians. This is Chinamen. They were giving people the story of all the races and of all the histories. And before that, before this history was disseminated this way and entered into folklore, there wasn't a high degree of literacy. Most people were subsistence farming. on frontiers and shit, or some other type of like indentured servitude. So the history that they had was probably just regional and local and folklore. And now we're entering into the folklore canon for people to circulate around amongst themselves. And then technology is starting to take off. And not long after this, we're going to have like the radios and the telegraphs and all of that. So, before long, this, this foundation of the mythos of the history of America, which is very much, you can pull out all of the same type of clues to the esoteric monomyth out of American history, just like you can with Roman history. So we really, as far as being sure about what happened historically, you go earlier than the Civil War and it gets very shaky about what's actually true and what's not history, but mythology. Yeah, Jimmy's right. There were human zoos at the World's Fairs. It was pretty whack. So, like, if this show, the major theme of this show is the sacred timeline and the managing of the perception of the historical narrative, they have to show the World's Fair in this show, because that's the most significant event in the sacred timeline that fits their whole allegory of controlling history, controlling the story of history. It's whenever I first saw season 2 of the show and they go to the World's Fair in this episode, I was like, well, we have to demystify this now. This pretty much sealed the deal for me. So I'm like excited that we're at this point in our analysis.
Awesome. Yes, man. Yes, totally required. Uh, uh, so World's Fair is a WF, Wheel of Fortune. Of course, they bring us to a Ferris wheel.
World Economic Forum.
Ferris is a serif. World Economic Forum. Yep. Even Whole Foods. Whole Foods is in the mix too. It's also a 56, or a 65, really. But yeah, that's a very interesting, because 56 is the minor arcana. The 56 cards of the minor arcana have a WF-FW relationship. And this is the labor class, and the mundane, the working cards are the 56 minor arcana. And then Chance, can you bring up the most recent one? Because I think it's perfect for everybody. Remember the statue. It's got the staff held up and with some kind of weird shapes on it. I did a decode. I think I figured out what Loki's staff from the Marvel Avengers, when that was the MacGuffin from the time travel that they were doing back in, I think it was Marvel Endgame, when they go back and they rewrite their own grand finale, season finale. Guys, I think the staff is actually encoding. Is that Norway? Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is Norway. I watched a short documentary on how Norway is the most prolifically, absurdly rich country, and how they came to wield so much control on the global economic chessboard. After the World Wars, uh, FDR, I think, his first question on the phone about the treaty was, "What are we going to do about Norway?" And everybody thinks that has to do with Antarctica, which is likely, but it doesn't have to be about Antarctica. It can just be about Norway, because their success model is mind blowing. How efficient they are at making money off of almost having nothing. It has to do with the forest industry and the way that their landscape benefits them, and the way they've played the cards that they have. And they have very few people actually live there. The numbers are completely the reverse of anything you would think of in any other economy you've ever heard of. It's such a boondoggle. I think the staff is shaped like the continent, like the shape of the Norway uh, proper, what it actually is looks like on the map. And so, can you go back to that picture, because the reason it's important is because of the cranes on the skyline. And the crane is the god machine. Whenever the end of the movie or the culminating situation needs to be explained, they just bring some strange contraption down, do some theatrical light flashing, and everybody says, ooh, ah. And then it doesn't even matter if the plot actually resolves itself. It's the ooh and the ah that is where the sleight of hand takes place. But this image, Chance, is from the original Marvel Avengers movie poster. And there, I've like super zoomed in to the skyline, and it's covered in these cranes. So the cranes are a symbol of the theater that brings the God machine that will resolve everything, but it's also how civilizations come and go. It's how they bring up these world fairs and take them back down so quickly. It's all due to the crane. And what is really a trip is that everybody gives credit to Thoth. Thoth gets the credit for the 42 jade tablets of Thoth in the Hermetic order. Well, strangely enough, we actually are worshiping the crane, which is the machine that makes buildings come up and go down, controlled demolition style. So yeah, I just thought I'd bring some of the uh, significance of the crane because we keep seeing the X, and the crane is the God machine. Oh yeah, and then speak softly and carry a big stick. That is exactly what this country does and has done to put themselves in a position to be hailed by Marvel Cinematic Universe with the staff.
That makes me, you're talking about the Deus Ex Machina. And I've been puzzling a little bit lately about how with the LR switch, the play is also pray, like you're praying. And where does theater originate? It originates with the priest class. So when you're talking about what you're describing, I wonder, for example, there's a belief amongst, I think it's the Hopi tribes, or it's a Native American tribe, where the belief is as long as at least one person prays for the turning of the sun, that is, for the sun to be born again and rise higher after the winter solstice where it dies, as long as at least one person prays for it, it will happen. So I wonder if that's the idea behind the plays, the tragedias, tragedies, the goat spells, the goat being Capricorn, that as long as the people see this, they are praying for it because they're seeing a play and they are cheering for the outcome that they, for the allegory of the hero to rise or the savior to succeed in his saving. So I think maybe that's the same thing going on here, is like all of this playcraft is a type of prayer initiation, but it may have taken a dark turn where we're praying for other things besides just the turning of
Yeah,
the sun.
totally, totally, yes. And there are some cults like Hecate, Artemis. They actually have a law that everybody has to be in on it together, and there can't be any stragglers. So when they do votive offerings and bring blood to the foot of a uh, idol, a stone idol, the blood on the foot of the stone idol, it has to be agreed upon by everybody involved. There can be no derelicts in the votive offerings. Very interesting.
Jenny shared some great stuff in our InnerVerse chat, some more images from the World's Fair. If this is a rabbit hole you guys have been down, then you know why we're talking about it. If it's one you haven't, then I recommend just getting into it. Howdy Murkowski's done a lot of good work on questioning the World's Fair. I'm not saying I agree with all his conclusions or, with the John Levi's of the world. I know nothing about building. So for all I know, maybe you could build these buildings in a year and then take them down. But there are, there's a lot of good reason to think that that's bullshit. Who knows? I mean, we don't consider the 1890s as being this highly illuminated time, but there's so much lighting at the World's Fairs. And there's these like orphanariums, and there's babies in incubators. There's like an exhibit of babies in incubators. It's all very strange. It's almost, I'm not saying this is what happened, but it is, if there was like a continent that was decimated and there's no people in it, and you, I don't know, cloned a bunch of people or really fast produced a lot of humans who knew nothing about their world or where they came from, and you just kind of threw them into the world, You might give them this type of Disney World attraction to help them get their bearings and understand what the rules are of this place that they're in. Who knows? It's very fishy. Here's the fishery building. It's very fishy. Like, this is so elaborate, and they just tear this down. Look at this. It's just outrageous, man. It's hard. The mind boggles. It's hard to comprehend that, what the official version of the story is hard to comprehend. And yeah, there's a ship here. This is Macmani's fountain.
Is it cut in half? It's half a ship.
Yeah, it's the Argo. Totally.
It's a half ship. That's boom. It's 100%.
Yeah. It's wild stuff. So, but it could be, as Zeraless says, high quality imitation like Disneyland. Could be. We weren't there. Everything's worth questioning though in life, especially in the mainstream version of events of anything. Always worth questioning. And now I'm going to get us back to our slides. Man, we're just having a great time with this one tonight. Thanks everyone for being here. I love you guys. I'm enjoying this.
Heck yeah.
Where is here we go. Okay. So we are in 1893. They're in the World's Fair. Here they are. And this is the point where they make the statement of, okay, whoever we're following on this trace, assuming it's Renslayer, they went to 1868. Was that a mistake? So then they went 25 years ahead? That's Loki's question. And this 25 is important because if you combine Resh and Hey, it's 205. Drop the 0 as you might do in Gematria, and there's your 25. There's a lot more to the 25, and some of it I'm saving for part 2. But it's just suffice to say that this 25 is a very important number for this time of year, the vernal time of year. And we're establishing that it's important because they're specifically saying the number in the episode, the difference between the two settings. Then let's bump forward a slide. They're wading through this throng or multitude or crowd. What do you know? The word for that in Hebrew is atzmi, and it equals 205, a throng, a multitude, a crowd. Here's those shields of the triumph, the arc de triomphe. They are a zodiac. I mean, just the fact that it's an arche, arche, it's a word in Greek that means the same thing as the Hebrew resh or ras. Can't make this up. And then we get, we see a crier who's got the newspaper, and he's saying the Liberty Bell Day to debut on the 4th of July. So the Liberty Bell. Bell is a name of the solar deity, of course. And so Bell's the name of the sun. This bell, the Liberty Bell, was taken around the nation to various centennial expositions. And it's a hugely important artifact to the American mythos. This is one of those artifacts that has the power to convince people that the story of the Revolutionary War, as described, is true. It was supposed to have been rung. The bell was first rung when the Declaration of Independence was signed. So I guess they just had this bell ready to go. It had the inscription on it: proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto the inhabitants thereof. It had that on the bell already, and then the first time they ring it is on the day the Declaration is signed. Like, all this is fishy. They already had the bell ready, and they say it got cracked, of course, immediately, or on the way on this circuit going around the country, maybe is where the crack got bigger. I don't know. The crack is its own thing, but this proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof, inscribed on the bell, is a biblical reference to the book of Leviticus 25, chapter 25. So there's your 25 again. And this, what is the book? What does it say in the book of Leviticus? I don't have the direct quote, but it's 25:10. Go look that up if you want. I did read it earlier today. So it's heralding a new dawn or a new age of liberty, like springtime does. these characters who now theoretically have free will, liberty will, if B and W swap, free bell, free will, liberty, free will, bell. You see, it's the same word, free will and liberty bell. And that's because the death of the old year or the original he who remains has removed the constraints, and now they have free will. They're no longer in debt or to this king, old king. And this Leviticus chapter 25 is actually, this verses about liberty are referring to the 50-year cycle of jubilees practiced by the Hebrews. Jew, bell, hey, jubilee. It's a Jew bell. So this is the Jew bell. And even better is the reference to the bell. So I even found the reference to when the bell was announced that it was going to be at the World's Fair in Chicago, and that was April of 1893, according to the history of the Liberty Bell. So that's springtime. The Hebrew word for vernal or springtime, belonging to spring, is a 200, the number of the rash. It's like, it's just everywhere, everything pointing at this is the time of year it is. This is what we're at in the cycle, over and over. You can't make this up. It's amazing. The Liberty Bell, free will.
Nice. Yeah, man, that's great. I love it. Liberty Bell is free will. That is so wild. Um, so one of the things about, remember the crossing the line ceremony with the two children on the sun card, is they're in the shackles together. The sailors, when they do that ritual, they're wearing the shackles together, much like the mount of this free will Liberty Bell. Also, Benjamin Franklin is on the $100 bill with this bell, has a great deal to do with the circumcision rites. But there's a funny counterpart, is the Serbian $100 bill has Nikola Tesla on it. So here is a Benjamin Franklin call. In the response in a minute is going to be a famous inventor. And he's going to be maybe a foreign inventor, because Nikola Tesla was a foreigner and he had to deal with, not being from here when he was rising into his story. So we have a Benjamin Franklin call and a Nikola Tesla response that's going to be articulated by Victor Timely. I love that you found the free will is in the Liberty Bell. That's
That
a good
wasn't even
one,
in my
man.
notes. I just was reading my notes and I
Can you pop up
realized that,
the?
of course, it is.
Yeah, yeah, man. And it's broken. And like that's kind of, it's so fascinating that it's actually still a question. Is there free will? Come on, man. Come on. People still make books trying to convince you there's no such thing as free will. It's a worthy argument, but I think we win. I sent you a graphic because the shields on that arcway has kind of plucked a chord for me. I have a theory, and the shields are not the exact same, but can you go kind of towards the top there, that arcway? This is the year that when they arrive here, this is the year that they made a new innovation in voting booths. They started to
Oh,
integrate new
yeah.
voting booths on this year.
Well, it's Edison's first
It's a sure.
patent, electric vote recorder or something.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So vote is eat of. You're consuming. You're partaking of this hero worship. So it is a sacrament, a communion of sorts. But in the scene on the street, they're little booths. They're ticket booths. And remember, in the last episode, there were ticket booths in the background. And the ticket booths, I got to say, it's not just about the election or the voting or the idea that democracy is a war against the individual. It's not just that. I'm actually realizing it has to do with the tree crickets. There's also tree crickets are kind of encoded, seeded into the ticket booths that keep popping up in their repeating of their loops. So yeah, but the
Oh,
ticket
yeah.
booths,
There's
this is
ticket booths here.
fascinating, are just yes, yes, and ticket booths are actually a repackaging of the confessional booth. You used to go into a confessional booth, and only you and your minister knew your darkness. Well, then when the voting booth came, it was just like the same thing. They were harnessing the confessional booth, and people would honor the privacy of what you're going to vote about. You wouldn't even tell your wife or even whatever. So back then, it was a big deal to have that moment of privacy, and he's got it. Bowotes, baby. There's Bowotes. There's the subconscious of the void of your evacuating yourself when you give your votive offering to the government. There is the Bowotes void that you make when you make the votive offering. And then
And
I have a
Votes or
theory
Botes is
about the
Adam in astrotheology. That's where Adam is at in the Adam and Eve story.
yes. It's also you're emptying yourself. Like in one hand, it's beautiful. That's what you do to be an artist. But on the other hand, when you're doing it for the government, there's a puppet hand that replaces that goes in that void. But I wanted to kind of weave on the shields on the archway. These do not correspond perfectly, but I have a theory that the nine worthies, who are signified by nine shields, nine family crests, I have a strong theory that they are also instilled into the Ivy League schools. And I have a weave I'm going to work on my own about the nine Ivy League schools. I have eight right here. I think Brown University was the last one added to the list to make it a full nine. I think they could fit into the Enneagram in fascinating ways as carrying the torch of the nine worthies. And there's a lot more behind those words right there, that the nine worthies might be the nine Ivy League schools, because the nine Ivy League
I find on
schools,
Google there's only 8 Ivy League
Ivy
schools.
is a symbol of Dionysus, and they were established before the Revolutionary War.
Okay. Is it maybe there's a secret ninth school? The Invisible
Yes,
College.
the ninth, uh, yep, the ninth, you got it, you got it. Yeah, the ninth is actually, I think, Browns. There's or Chicago. There were like two wannabes that want to be plugged into the last one, but the cutoff mark was the Revolutionary War, so they're kind of retrofitting that ninth one totally. But it's so interesting. You picked up the Liberty Bell, and I'm picking up Ivy League schools, and the dividing line of what is Ivy League and what's not has to do with that. The crack in the Liberty Bell. So yeah, there's probably some strong magic around Ivy League schools in the history of the Revolutionary War.
Well, it's interesting. This just came up in a random Google search about Ivy League schools, but the one of the, you know how there's like people also ask with Google and there's those drop downs you can click on that answer a question. So one of the questions was, has anyone got into all 8 Ivy League schools? And it says in 2016, 216, Kelly Hiles achieved an extraordinary feat by being accepted into all 8 Ivy League colleges. Now that word Hiles is interesting because it's a word used by the Gnostic texts. Hyle, Hyle. Her name is spelled exactly the same way. And it's the primary meaning is the wood of the tree of life. The Ivy League. Like weird. That's just weird. That's just weird that the person who got it, she must know a lot, or he, if you got the all 8 Ivies accepting you. That's so wild. Okay. And it's in 2016 for our 216. God, what is life? Life is so fun and weird. Okay. So back to where were we? Man, we're having such a good time tonight. This is like just a few minutes into the episode. There's so much to talk about. We're like blessed with riches in this allegory to this. I think this is the best way to teach the system of symbolism. This is the best way to do it. It's the most fun way for everybody. We can all follow along. We can all get it. It's so much fun. So I'm grateful for that we can. And what slide number am I on? 34. Okay. So they are looking for breadcrumbs, clues to figure out where their Miss Minutes and Renslayer might be. And Loki catches from this previous guy who's got the newspapers, this little kid doing the town crier thing. Loki picks up one of his newspapers and sees, whoa, there's Miss Minutes, the cartoon clock. She's a ghost clock haunting the Midway. So there she is. She's the Holy Ghost. She's a ghost. I mean, couldn't be much more clear. She's everywhere and nowhere. And then if you look, I'll zoom in on it if I can. Yeah. So here's the World's Fair Hotel being advertised. That is the hotel that was owned by this H.H. Holmes guy, the serial killer with potentially a 200 deep body count, supposedly. And he basically, they call this Holmes Castle, this World's Fair Hotel. He had an entire murder castle built specifically for serial killing, allegedly. He spent nearly a decade hiring and firing builders and craftsmen to add pieces to his house that included pipes for pumping gas into bedrooms, a room built specifically to suffocate people, and a murder basement where he would strip the skin from his victims, allegedly. So I'm over here, I'm just like, this entire story just makes me think of Holocaust stories.
The original.
He probably was killing them with a jerk-off machine.
I'm thinking he was. I'm thinking he's the original Florida man.
That's fun. H.H. Holmes. Look into that. There's actually a movie about him called Murder Castle, I think. I saw when I was looking into him. He's a new fella to me, but what a story. What a story. So, okay, getting back to my slides. I keep losing my place. Here we go. We got the next shot is that the camera does a pinhole window as it fades out, but this is a really unorthodox way of doing a scene transition. It would have been maybe more common back in olden times, the early days of Hollywood, sure. So maybe that's like a throwback, but it's a window. It's like a hay. I mean, it's not in the shape of a hay, but it forms a little window that I couldn't help noticing. So the camera makes this pinhole. And then in the next shot, just to establish that it's what I'm saying is true, is they walk through one of these hay-shaped archways, fully walk through it. And it's based on Chinese design, Buddhist design. Go ahead.
Man, okay. This is amazing that you just set this up. Like you just lined up all these dominoes for me. So the new arrangement on the top on the stage, this is the doing group on the top of my Enneagram. The new arrangement actually develops a camera that shines across the top of the Enneagram. And I kind of got to stand up to explain why, but Schopenhauer and Goethe were working on camera obscura technology. And they have a couple of books where they're actually developing a new form of understanding how light works. And it was against what Newton had said. Newton had one hypothesis on light, and Goethe was like, no, these guys haven't figured it out. So he and Schopenhauer were working on light and camera obscura technology, just like John Dee and Edward Kelly. And it comes through in the Faust story, in the workings of Faust. And the process of Faust being traveling around the world was also using new light technology on the stage. So Faust is actually a piece of the history of theater. And the camera obscura device that they would have been using is actually up here with my Schopenhauer card now. It's shining through this star card as the window, so it's like a crystal that the light is going through. So here's the lantern in the hermit. Here's the window in the star card. Here is the pinwheel that you were talking about. Like this scene right now is going through a pinwheel. So this is the pinwheel. Here are the two figures, Loki and Mobius, walking. This is their backs turned. This is the moon card. And here is the Ferris wheel. in the background that they're walking towards. So right now we're looking through the pinhole, the light of the maybe August, the fire goes through the lantern, goes through the window, goes through the pinwheel. Here's the two guys with the hats with their backs turned, and here's the Ferris wheel uh, on, on the background. That's pretty profound that the entire camera is looking across the stage. This is literally the stage. The 891 is the do grouping. Chance, they are constantly on my dry erase board. Whatever the writers are doing in the campers and designing the stage, they're basically stealing my work and making it for Hollywood. All right.
Well, they totally did with your work on 216 and tax day and the analemma. I mean, that basically is proven in this episode. It's either you discovered something that's already there and is known about, or we're setting the bar for mysticism right now. Either way, it's a fun option. Okay, so what they were doing back on the other side of the midway here, I think it's the west side. They were getting their Cracker Jack concession stand on because Mobius is a 7 with a gluttony shadow, so he does his best thinking when he can do some glutting on some sweets. He really needed the Cracker Jacks. And it's funny because he finally implores Loki, well, eat some. You haven't even tried your Cracker Jacks. And Loki says, it tastes like ash. Which is like a funny burn, but why would he mention ash? Might it be that the ash tree is correlated to the sun and the world tree is the ash tree, which is on the sun card in its alternate symbolic form as the world mountain? Same thing. I think that's why it's ash. That's a very specific thing to say. It's ash, rash. And then Mobius is talking about how he works slow and methodically, but nothing gets by him because I see everything. I notice everything. So Mobius sees everything. Another solar reference, of course, because the sun is what lets us see things. And when the sun is out, we can see everything. And perhaps the sun itself also sees everything, as I alluded to earlier. But here's the 216 showing up again as the word ray. Ray. Resh, Resh, Aleph, Yod, Hey, Ray equals 216, and it means sight, evidence, and proof. So he sees everything. He's looking for evidence. He's finding clues. Mobius is talking about all of those ideas. So the 216 is very applicable here. Honestly, going through the list of Hebrew words that equal 216, probably 9 out of 10 of them apply to this episode, at least in one spot, if not in multiple spots. By the way, sight as a concept is attributed to the letter He and to the sign Aries. The Hebrew letters that correspond to Aries are He and Resh. Maybe I already said that, maybe not, but Resh He is Aries to the Hebrew system. And why He is related to sight is probably because of the idea that He carries the idea of vibration, which is the God moving upon the face of the waters, is the wind vibrating the waters, which is like stirring things up and putting the energy into the system that life can build itself out of. Vibration is the fundamental nature of the fiery power that makes sight possible in the esoteric system. Yeah, but right here, just the fact that we've established it's in April because of the Liberty Bell thing, and there's all these 216s laid up in this episode. So 216 is in Aries, which is in April. It's tax day is in Aries season. This is, like we were just saying, this is the profound evidence of Gabe's work on the 216 subject is all laid up in the Gematria of this episode. It's brilliant. I was so excited to show you just how right you were about all that stuff. And a long time ago, too.
You know, nice. Thank you, buddy. Yeah, I'll mention that they're missing the lamp posts, and the lamp posts are lit by Learys. And so, like you were talking about the child, what his job is a shouter or a caller,
Oh, yeah,
the kid
Crier.
selling the newspaper. Well, the Lear crier, and yeah, so the Leary is one who lights the lampposts And here he is talking about how he sees everything. And we've been seeing the Satan X being seated in the background as well. So they're being told to be on the lookout, to be leery of what's coming, and also the rods and the cones of perception. They say whatever they really are, we do know that color is one and then depth is the other. And so here they have these, they're eating the popcorn in the shape of rods and cones.
Nice call. Whoa. Yeah, they're eating the popcorn out of the cone. And also, corn, Cracker Jacks are a type of popcorn, gives you your KRN, which is Kronos, the corn, and the horn. And it's like the shape that they're eating the popcorn out of is like the horn of plenty, the cornucopia shape. Wow. I didn't even think of that, but it's totally there. I just sort of jazzed on past the corn or the Cracker Jacks, but that's a total thing. Man. Although calling it Cracker Jacks is apparently an anachronism. They weren't called that yet, but they did have molasses coated popcorn at the World's Fair. Just maybe the Cracker Jack brand was something to do with, I don't know, baseball or something later. Really not important. The next thing that they see, though, is this is very important. They see this diorama, as it's called, of the Norse trinity of Balder, Odin, and Thor. And this is where Loki's kind of hating on it. He's like, you can't reduce an entire culture down to a simple diorama. Well, that's basically commentary on what the World's Fair did. It reduced entire cultures down to simple dioramas. The diorama comes from the Greek word dia, meaning through, and horama, meaning a view or sight. So a diorama is to see through or a through view. Back to the idea of sight. And Loki is skeptically dioramming this spectacle as he sees through it. He sees through the inaccuracies in it. But interestingly, Dio and diorama in the green language is saying the god Ram, or Rama, the Ram of God, the Lamb of God. Where we are in this episode is well established already, the birth of the Son of God, Ares, the Lamb. So of course you would want to use the word diorama, got to. And Loki starts complaining about why did they even include Balder? Nobody's ever heard of him. So we should talk about the myth of Balder for a second, because it's the exact same as the Fisher King, pretty much to a T. I already brought up the Fisher King. Of course, it's all of the dying and resurrecting gods are the same, but Balder, he has a dream of his own death. He's a son of Odin and Frigg, or Freya, and he's like the most beautiful. He's the solar god. Everybody loves Balder. He's totally sundog. And his mother has the same dream that Balder's going to die. And since dreams are usually prophetic, he gets depressed about it. And so Frigg, his mother, makes every object on Earth vow to never hurt Balder. And every living thing and every object makes the vow except for the mistletoe. And this detail traditionally is explained with the idea that it was too unimportant and non-threatening to bother asking it to make the vow. I think that it has more to do with the like the druids and their use of mistletoe. And you don't cross into mistletoes growing on oaks and stuff. You don't cross the druids or mess with their rituals. So, the mistletoe is really hard to harvest and had a sacred purpose. So maybe that's why it's a death pledge. But the point being, well, also mistletoe is actually missile is made into a missile as Loki makes a spear out of the mistletoe and has the blind god Hod throw it at Balder. Some versions it's an arrow, but this happens at a celebration type of thing where they're celebrating how Balder is going to live forever because nothing is going to harm him because everything promised not to. And everything that they throw at Balder or shoot at him always misses because everything that it's made out of, the missiles, vowed not to harm him. But then the blind god Hod throws the mistletoe spear at him, just like the Fisher King is wounded by a spear, just like Jesus is wounded by a spear, Odin is wounded by a spear, et cetera, et cetera. And the mistletoe gets him and he dies. Everybody's sad. And it's said that Balder is to await in hell until Ragnarok, until after which he'll emerge and be one of the rulers of the new earth. So the dying and resurrecting, the once and future king, the exact same myth we already mentioned. It's a version of Adonis who goes into the underworld, and Persephone, the myth of how the sun has to go to die in winter but be reborn in a new cycle. Interestingly, Balder, the sun, is killed by an archer or a spear slinger, and the word for a archer or marksman or slinger in Hebrew is, yeah, it's a 200, the number of Rash in the sun card. It's a Kaf Lamed Ayin 200. The in the mythology, the motivation behind Loki's trickering of Balder getting killed is a bit ambiguous, but some versions say he killed Balder out of jealousy, or out of anger for the way Balder boasts of his own immortality. But either way, Loki is responsible for Balder's death, which they don't really mention in this show, but we all know Loki has a sordid past. And by the way, the ball of Balder is the bell of the Liberty Bell. It's the same phonetic, the B to the L, and the der is like a tur, sir. All of those, that phonetic is interchangeable too. S and T, D and T, all interchange. So Balder is like Bell Sir or Bell Tor. Anyway, there's just some fun etymology there, and you even see this spear showing up. There's an illustration of Balder here. He's got a spear and a shield. That's an Ophiuchus vibe. But the Statue of the Republic has a similar thing going on for sure in the World's Fair.
Nice. So one thing that the fact that there's 3 statues kind of has a hail back to, remember the council that they all turned out to be machines? There were 3 of those characters. And that goes back to Hades has 3 judges, allegedly. They all have different names. So there's probably, this is just hailing back to the triune ancient ways of judgment. But there's also a bit of a hail to the adjustment card that we brought forward in that scene when they were in front of that council of machines. And that judgment card has scales. Well, the pattern on this roof is actually scaling. Funny enough. And then, Chance, can you pull up the one I just sent on the telly to you? Because this is a carving, this is a sculpture or an artistic rendition, and he's even critiquing the art in a fun way. Well, recently there's a new meteor shower that is taking place in the Sculptorid constellation. So this is the Cosmo sculpture, and it signifies a great many things. Friedrich Nietzsche, for one, the head of John the Baptist, for two, because it's in Aquarius, right by the star card. We are in the star card dominion, and there is a new meteor shower that is renovating the nature of the heavens, because the new meteor shower, I'm counting it as number 20, the 20th meteor shower. It is a resh. It is taking place in the head, this sculpture head. So the sculptorid meteor shower has been on my radar because it's altered the nature of the meteor shower cycles, and it's on a sacred table, which is an altar. And this is just a picture of the TVA handbook next to when I did the countdown for New Year's. I was looking at the logo, and the logo, I was like, am I seeing TVA in this? It's like a Kentucky video, I don't know, some random channel, but I was finding the TVA encoded in the symbol for the ball drop for my New Year's celebration, and the artist, and also renovating history through art, making art shape people's worldview. That's kind of the new historical rewrite that's coming down the pipe.
God, and with the AI generated art, that becomes quite quite a concern. It's a real thing. I feel like the best part is yet to come in this decode. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I love the scene that's coming up. So I'm excited to get there. First, though, Mobius says to Loki as they're looking at the Norse gods, after Loki's like, Thor's not even that tall. Mobius says, you know, sometimes I forget you're one of them. You're one of these gods. You're a mythological character. Of course, Mobius forgetting is one of his defining character traits, memory problems, as I have already mentioned earlier in the episode. It's so internally consistent, like the mem and Mobius and memory, like they make sure, and with the seven and the on the Enneagram with him and his gluttony, every damn episode he's eating some kind of pie or sweet thing. So last episode he ate pie twice, for the love of Pete. So next, this is great. Next thing that happens is they turn around after looking at the Norse thing, and they see that there's a cart of pigs going by. And I'm going to just read from the book Set for Sapphires. That's the Hebrew Gematria book that PK sent to me. If anybody wants that, we can share it again in the InnerVerse Telegram chat. It's such a helpful resource. You know, you want to go check the receipts on the claims in the book, but it's really good. Oh, before I read this quote, Gabe, get in here. Go for it.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, I want to say a message to PK in particular. PK and I have a little side weave around Alapin. Maya Alapin is a researcher who just used a computer to find the absolute center of Plato's Republic by counting every single syllable. And the center mark is at his allegory of the centered line, the divided line. So alapin is a very supercharged word right now. PK and I, we've been weaving on this on the side channel, and so this alpine is hitting a chord because I found out that alapin Sicilian is a chess maneuver, and also pigs on the seventh. PK, pigs on the seventh is another chess maneuver. So I'm seeing chess language seated in the peripheral for those with eyes. And the word alapin is like a linchpin in my psyche on my seashells on my seashore. So I just wanted to point that out. Uh, yeah, that I'm seeing more of the chess strategy for certain. Yeah, yeah. I just got to say, oh, and the statuary is like chess pieces, right? The statues are like big old chess pieces. So I just wanted to mark that for PK because Maya Alapin is on our radar. I can't go without saying it's pretty exciting.
Well, I didn't even put it in my slides, but these pigs, yeah, it says alpine hogs, prize winning alpine hogs. And alpine refers to mountains or high places. It's, you know, the Alps, for example. And wouldn't you know, one of the words in Hebrew that equals 216, it is spelled mem, vav, resh, aleph. No, not resh. Mem, shoot. I don't know. I'm looking at it. Yeah, mem, vav. That's not a 216. Sometimes this damn book gets stuff wrong. That's why you got to check your receipts. But it claims it claims that there's a word that means mountain that equals 216. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, I think it's spelled wrong. And now I have to double check myself. I've got it. There's this great book or great website, doitinhebrew.com, where you can put in Hebrew or English words and get the Hebrew equivalent and vice versa. So that's one of the ways I double check my work. Okay. So it's giving me a different word for mountain. So that's why I didn't include it in the slides, because I hadn't double checked it yet. But okay, so never mind. Maybe mountain is not a 216. Sorry. But I'm going to look into that a little more next time. That's not really the important part about these pigs, okay? There is a 200 here, which is the word etzem, which is ayin sadi mem. And that is a 200 like resh. It refers to substance, essence, wealth, livestock, and the self. So there's different ways that this can show up in the episode. And I'll return to this in part 2. But to read from the book Set for Sapphires, which is usually great, but it sometimes gets shit wrong, like the word for mountain. Or maybe I need to do a little research to figure out how that works. It says, referring to Psalm 139:15, my substance was not hid from thee when I was made in secret and curiously wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. So this is the human body and the earth identified together. The substance is the universal radiant energy, the hay. The word etzim is closely related to the word ayin tzadi, or etz, which is a tree, and it also means might and force, like the word heil used by the Gnostics. Think about Zig Heil, right? And anyway, its primary meaning is wood. So here we have the human body is likened to the tree of life, whose essence is that life. We have Balder and the other gods made of wood, and Balder, whose essence is sent into the lowest part of the earth. And then Loki has just mentioned ash, the tree of life, or the world tree. And next up is livestock, which curiously is also an occasional meaning of this word that equals 200 and has all these meanings encoded in it. So basically, this one word of the substance and the essence is like 360-degree panorama. All the things in this 360-degree panorama, right? Because there's diorama and panorama. Panorama is the all sight. It's like all of it fits with this one word that is laid up in the rash. So that blows my mind. And maybe even the mountain, the alpine of it does too. I'll have to consider that more closely. And then we have, let's see, get my notes back up. It all disappeared. Then we have a close-up on the sign where it's advertising Victor Timely's astounding temporal marvels. I appear to have accidentally copied some text over the top of this. Not relevant. But it's interesting how Victor Timely's exhibit is listed with all of the Germans. You know, I was just talking about the Heil, Sig Heil, and now Timely is with the Germans. The Germans are where all the high tech is at, but also the high culture, the high art, especially in this time, like in philosophy and psychology, majorly so. And interestingly, the word that's on here that's the most prominent word is temporal marvels, and temporal marvels is a 51. And I'll delve into why the 51 is super important. We touched on it at the very beginning, but go ahead, Gabe.
I did not see that. Good catch on the German, the brother tongue. And there's a kind of a brother aspect here to the Germans being our brother tongue. That's pretty fascinating that the brother aspect is also not just in Loki and Mobius, but also we're looking for a brother, right? Is the character we're going to find. So there's brothers on brothers. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and I brought up the temporal marvels being a 51. That's in septenary. I just stick with septenary for English words, but that way I'm not just doing a bunch of ciphers to find what fits. But I thought that was fun to give us a segue into talking more about the spelling of Resh Yod Shin equaling 510. And it comes up really powerfully in the very next scene because they're like, okay, Victor Timely's astounding temporal marvels. That's where we want to go. That's where Renslayer would be. They don't know that Victor Timely is a He Who Remains variant. So they go into this, I don't know, saloon, whatever you might want to call it, where like this pub or bar where there's polka music playing. Pol is another bell, by the way. Polka, belka, PB switch. That's not even what's relevant here. What's relevant is that the band is playing their music while there are orbs of light, like suns or stars, and their spherical nature is accentuated. Well, guess what? The music of the spheres is the same spelling. If you just reverse Resh, and instead of Resh Yod Shin, you spell it Shin Yod Resh, Shir, or Shire. It's the music of the spheres. It refers to a song, poem, a hymn, singing or enchantment or a mantra, as in yoga, but it's specifically suggestive of the correlation between sound and light, and it's the word referring to the music of the spheres, which is mentally controlled vibration. It's that power, it's that emanative power again. So mind blowing. We get the music of the spheres. We see music while there's these spheres, and if we needed more evidence to be considering the sun card and the star card, here is a perfect shot that just is a complete tableau of everything involved. The music of the spheres. It's so cool.
I love it, Chance. I love it. Yes. And my star card on the Thoth deck, she is a dancer. She's Terpsichore, the muse of the dance. So like they're really hitting all aspects of the muses and the tarot. That's great. Real nice catch.
Thank you. I do partially the reason
And
why I
even
do this is just to
libations.
see your reactions in live in real time. You're the best witness. You're a great witness for this. Okay, so in this saloon, you see Renslayer's in here. They were right. She's here. She's telling Miss Minutes to stay in the bag, so she's concealed in the bag. There's that concealment word, the AD, Aleph Dalet, that is the equivalent to the letter Hey in numerical value. And at the same time, our heroes come in and they wish to stay concealed as well from Renslayer. Now, then we have our guy, Victor Timely. Oh boy, this is good because we're finally seeing the matured version of him. And even the idea of maturation, like I didn't put this in the notes or in the slides either, but the idea of being mature, not like old, but and you're unmarried, but you're of the age that you could like fight in the army, so you're a young but mature adult. That word is a word in Hebrew that equals 216 as well. And let's see, what is it's bet chet vav. Yeah, bet chet vav rash. That's 216. It means, so that's what he is right now. He's of that age. I'll probably put that in a slide in part 2 just to really give the visual to it. But here he is about to give his thesis, his dissertation, his lecture, his sermon. That's literally what he's doing right here. And that word in Hebrew that describes that is Dalet, Resh, Vav, Shin. That's 510. So we're in the ballpark again of, wait, is that a 510? No, that's a 216. Wait. I might be getting that one wrong mathematically. Shoot. We need to look into that one more. I don't think that's 510. I think that's 216. Let me double check my math. This is where it gets tricky. But it is one of those numbers. Dalet, Resh, Vav, Shin. Typing that in, putting that in the old Gematrinator. That's literally the Gematria. That's the name of the site where I do the quick access to the Gematria. Or Torah calculator is a good one. Yeah, okay, it is 510. My bad. That is a 510. I don't know where I was going off course there. It's the
nice.
It is. Yeah. So it's 510 and he's giving his thesis.
Nice. Okay, while we have the word dervish, essentially dervish, DRVSH, diverse, diversity. I want to point out that Gurdjieff was a dancer. He harnessed the Enneagram into dance and choreography. I think that Metropolis, the film, had Gurdjieff's dance moves in specific scenes during a grand unveiling of the Deus Ex Machina. And so his technology was harvested from the Sufis, the Sufi mystics, who were called the beekeepers. And so the dervish aspect of the Gurdjieffian potential here is really profound. I'm starting to see Gurdjieff as the big eggplant. Gurdjieff is bald. He's got those silly mustache that looks like the shoulders of an eggplant. I'm starting to see the eggplant is also encoding the gourd chef, the who served up these implements of this divine dance. So I just wanted to put that while Dervish is on the table. The Gurdjieffian implication of the Enneagram, I think, is subtly seated. But yeah, what else? What else?
Dylan says that Darvish is a beggar who goes from door to door, kind of like Ebionites. I see that like Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, they come to your door, they give you a sermon. That's a thing. Yeah. Also, notice that. So he's gonna finally give his lecture, his dissertation. It's a very hey thing, like the letter hey, because hey, basically the most common meaning for it is behold, check it out. You know, he's about to present. And the stage is darkened, but he carries a tiny lamp like the hermit, representing the light within the darkness or the inner light, the subtle essence of the creative power of God. And this is important because, like, as this episode goes on, the order Abkeo and light out of darkness becomes the theme of the episode from this point forward. Absolutely, because it's nighttime now. It was day before, but now it's night for the rest of the episode. And his speech, I'm going to, as we go through these slides, just read his speech verbatim. It's not a very long lecture, but he starts by saying, time is everything. It moves through each and every one of us. It shapes our lives, our futures, but perhaps we can shape it. Don't be shocked when I tell you that the future that time is the future of energy. Why should we toil in the dirt? There's the earth question for coal and petroleum when the energy of the past, present, and future flows all around us. So this 510 being reduced to a 6, like the spelling of hay, as hey Aleph, is important because 6 is called the first perfect number, and it's symbolic of the universal forces of light, heat, and electromagnetism, which he's about to discuss. And Tifereth is the 6th Kabbalistic sphere of beauty and masculinity, and it's the sphere of the sun. He's also holding this lantern, very much hermit-like in this point. He's the one that knows everything. You know, he's the Virgo figure in that sense. There's a Virgo nature about that. But this is my favorite. This is maybe one of my favorite things about the whole weave is that I found out that Kronos in Greek, kappa, rho, omicron, nu, omicron, sigma, equals in Greek gematria 510. Kronos is the sun. It totally
wow, man.
And there's already reasons to think that.
Awesome.
Other reasons to think that before I found out about the gematria side was that, you know, the probability that Kronos is related to either the word karanis, which is from karan, to point upwards, or to emit rays, or to shine. By the way, there's one of the meanings of one of the Hebrew words that equals 6 is to shine. So anyway, the sun, you point upwards to point at it. It emits rays. It shines. That's karan. That's the KRN, the kern, the corn. Or karen, which is a horn, or might, or power, or king, or karan. All these things kind of come right into the resh because a horn is on your head, on your resh, right? And whoever has got the power or the king wears the crown on their head. They're mighty, right? And they're the ones that the leader unites everybody. And that's another meaning of karen, to knot together, to unite. And in this presentation, what is he doing? He's demonstrating the temporal loom, which is weaving things together, knotting them together, uniting them. In Hebrew, Kronos, in Hebrew would mean the mighty being. Kran, S. So lots of other reasons too, but this is, you're going to love this one, dude. All right, because here, this is the beginning of him as Kronos. It's the new cycle, right? So he's the springtime version. He's the Aries version. He's the spring chicken. Well, at the winter solstice, the last time we saw this guy, he was the scapegoat. He was the bad guy. They were pinning all their problems on him. And in the vernal equinox, the spring equinox, he's the victim. And this comes up more later in the episode. We'll talk about this a lot more in part 2. But take the first 3 letters of Victor, the first 3 letters of Timely, his name, victim. Okay? He's the Holocaust. He's the victim, the burnt offering. And not in this episode, but in episode 4, he literally gets sacrificed. He literally gets holocausted. He gets burnt to ash. He gets spaghettified. Unbelievable. Can you believe it? That was just staring us in the face. Victor Timely.
Dude. Yes, this is great, dude. Okay. So then you could take what's left and it becomes
let me say this.
Elater.
Victim means sacrificial offering. We got to say that. That's what victim means at the original meaning of the word.
Right.
So I'm not saying victim like it's used in media or whatever. I'm talking about sacrificial offering.
Yes, yes. And then he's also the Tor, which is like the leader of victims, but he's also the one who elates in victim mentality or spreads it to others. That is really something fascinating. Oh, and Chance, you noticed that he has a speech impediment. Did you notice that his earlier self, the victim self, has a speech impediment? This is true to Biden, who was a JR, a Sun card, or has the JR, and then the Kennedy Jr., also a Sun card. He's got a speech thing going on too. So there's something about drumming up the charitable cause of having your pouring your heart out and sympathizing for a rhetorician, a con man, who we find out he actually isn't is the person we thought he was. So there's a possibility he's even faking the his speech impediment to drum up sympathy, which would be a cunning maneuver for a rhetorician or a confidence man.
Yeah, and he's victimizing people in his role as a con man trickster. PK just sent into the Vibrant Telegram channel a list of Greek words with 510 in the Gematria. And oh boy, does it fit perfectly to everything else. I might get into some of these in the part 2, which is probably Wednesday, unless I can't pull it off, and then we'll just have a regular Vibrant hangout. We'll see. But yeah, when I realized Victor Timely was the victim, I just about shit bricks. I was like, this is unreal. I can't believe this. It's so clear. Because the scapegoat is the goat that they send away. It's Capricorn. The winter solstice is the scapegoat. That's the devil. It's the bad guy. It's the low point of the sun. And the spring equinox is when you sacrifice the ram, the Aries, the lamb, the victim. So it's the 2 goats, you know? Like it literally is. And this character perfectly captures both of those ideas. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. I'm glad to have you with me because to see it and to get your reaction and witness, that makes it so fun and so worth it.
Yeah, man. Let me stand up real quick. Can you make me big? I want to show him on the map a little. I'm starting to realize that they're not really just one place on the map. They're actually holding an entire arc. So like Timely is the individual. He's the death card down here with that shadow of envy. When he's in his earlier, when he's got the right now in this scene, but when he's up in his high castle, he's the fortune card. He's up here as a perfectionist or a reformer. So of course he has a smooth operator persona when he's in his castle, but when he's down here and he's uh, building himself up still, he's very much he plays into this devil card. And I'm just going to buzz a little bit about the replacement theory is being inseminated very powerfully because the other individual is Brad. And so Brad was over here getting tortured, being locked away, being put in the Guantanamo Bay situation. And so while we are shaming Brad so much, we're the guy we want, the guy that has all the answers, who's going to be the big savior going forward, the Black Hitler, is the other individual. And instead of being put down like Brad, this guy's going to be lifted up to the one position. So Brad kind of has like a relationship for the 2 to the 4. Timely has a 4 to the 1. So we're literally looking at Brad here. Breaking Brad is the 2 to the 4. And Victor going up to He Who Remains is the 4 to the 1 arc. So those are kind of two ends of the enantiodromia that will play out over the arc of this character.
I love that. Yeah, catching the enantiodromia, the tendency of things to become their opposite, such a huge part of proper storytelling, but it's so hard to pull off in storytelling to make it believable. That's great. And I want to say too how, if you remember when we had He Who Remains in his high tower, it'd be better if I had a picture of the Kabbalistic tree of life, but I'm just going to describe it. So in that episode, it was all about Yesod, the sphere of foundation, and the paths from the left and the right hand pillars of Netsack, Victory, Nutsack, and what's the other one? It's not Hokmah. Netsack, and okay, I do have to pull up the Tree of Life. There's so many things to remember perfectly. Tree of Life, and I'll put it up on the screen. That way, I'm not just.
Okay, yeah.
I think you might be right. No, it's. I think it's Hod, maybe Splendor. Yeah, it's Hod. So let me make this big so everyone can see it. Oh, stupid Pinterest! You can't make things big properly. Google search gives you a lot of Pinterest. All right, so this is what I'm talking about. This is great. So in the season finale of season 1 of Loki, we had this conflict between Sylvie and Loki where she was on the side of Netsack or Victory. He was on the side of the Hod or it's Splendor. But what is the other meaning of Hod? It's that's the god, the blind god that hits Balder with the spear. But regardless, okay. So this path between Victory and Splendor to Foundation, we didn't talk about so much, but it's actually the Sun, the Star card again. And we're seeing this exact same dynamic later in this episode. We'll talk about it in part 2, and I'll describe it better. I should have just saved it, but when I gather my thoughts, I'll describe it better. But this is the same conflict that happens in this episode later on between Sylvie and Loki about whether or not they're going to kill He Who Remains, who is the generative principle, the Yesod. Are they going to castrate Addis, the son of Kybel, Adam? Are they going to castrate Adam, or are they going to let him become the king? Anyway, that's a side weave. We'll save that for next time, but we're almost to the end of what I had prepared for tonight. It's amazing how much effort it can take to do just a few minutes of the episode of coverage of one episode, because there's so much there.
Yeah, man. I got something on that Tree of Life you just showed. Those to me, those kind of signify the hips of that Tree of Life. And I think that's just interesting because we keep seeing the archway framing things. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, I think the hip girdle seems to be a repeating theme over and over that may be signified by what you just showed on the Tree of Life.
Yeah, and there's a lot of horses in this episode too. And the Greek word for horse is hippos. They even make reference to the Ottoman hippodrome that was at the World's Fair, which hippodrome is like a big arena with a circular track that you would use for horse racing and whatnot. But that aside, back into Victor Timely's presentation, his dissertation and lecture, he starts talking about how his temporal loom inverts the temporal decay of the electricity flowing through it and gathers it into 5 threads of power. And or voltage is what he says. Votage, votive, right? Because he's the offering, the votive offering. But this word, dakuth, dalet, kaf, vav, tav. Yeah, dakuth. That's another 510, and it refers to the thinness or fineness or subtlety of the creative power, the essence. You know, the subtle emanations, the subtle vibration that create the gross, the subtle that creates the gross. And that's exactly what he's doing here. He's extracting the subtle energy from the cosmic forces of electromagnetism and making it into like raw time energy. So there's that. And there's also right before this a part where he's like starting a speech and some crotchety white supremacist, back to your replacement theory. He's like, what would you know about the future, boy? So, of course, they had to put that in there because this is the episode about rash. So you got to have the race card pulled, the Ross card. Of course, that's important. And I didn't make a slide for that, but I just remembered that. So he's like, it's gathering it into fine threads of... Oh, go ahead.
Little Boy was the name of the nuclear bomb. Little Boy.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to talk about triggering. You want to talk about triggering. Well, the word boy is triggering for not just black people, but it should be triggering for Japanese people too, because we dropped a boy. We dropped a little boy on them and blew them the fuck up. So this trigger, it magnifies. It even sounds like another pejorative. The word trigger sounds like another terrible word we would say. So it's like triggers inside of triggers. You know what I mean? And I could say that because I'm a ginger. Yeah, but it is.
I personally,
but that's the subtle. Hold on. That's the subtle informing the gross that you're talking about, the subtlety and then informing the gross. The same thing with the next comment is the guy he paid to heckle him. And that guy says like just the right words of a naysayer, and Timely is ready to smash that naysayer because it's a seeded comment. He anticipated that comment. And that is the subtlety informing the masses. And now the masses are like, oh, he humiliated the one guy with the good argument single-handedly, and then that wins the crowd over. But we find out that that guy was a plant. So that is the subtlety informing the gross. You really picked it out here, man. So yeah, I just wanted to say, boy is a trigger for Japanese people too.
Yeah.
Pikadon. Pikadon means nuclear bomb in Japanese. And that's PKD, Philip K. Dick, Pikadon. Trigger, trigger, trigger.
I'm trying to remember what it's called when you plant somebody in the audience that's actually on your side, but looks like, you know, it's a controlled opposition thing. It's definitely a con man type of move, and politicians have done it from time immemorial.
Yeah, man. This plays into the Delphi technique. If you
that's
you
what it's
have
called.
everybody who thinks that they're here for a democratic discussion, and it's playing into the Delphi technique. And if you have some plants in there, you can steer things along real smooth.
Okay. Yeah, there's some oracular stuff in this show all over it, really. And I think there's gematria to support the idea of an oracle in this episode too. I'll look for it in the part 2 when we get to it. But the other thing I forgot to say about this.
Hold on a second. Hold on. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, the other thing about the weaving of the subtle into the gross of its temporal loom is reminding me of the myth of Arachne, the weaver, right? And her name contains the arche, which means head and wisdom and first. It's the same as resh. It's a Greek version. That's, you know, and if you look at arche, it's an anagram for resh. Just take the R out and put it in front of the A, and it becomes rake. And the C could be an S, resh, rash. Arche, rash. I never realized that, but it's the same word. It's like just a jumbled version of the same damn word. That's amazing. So Arachne the Weaver is another version of this whole situation.
I love this. I love this. And one more point here. I'm going to get on the slick dissident board one more time. Because remember that Mobius, he has his one attachment is the jet ski manual that is actually analog to the Zen and the motorcycle maintenance repair that tells us if we plug that into that MacGuffin, it tells us he's in denial of his old self. In Zen and the motorcycle maintenance repair, the old persona who was zapped out of existence was named Phaedrus. And Phaedrus is the rhetorician. So Mobius is in denial of his number one self. And here on this moment, he's going to see the shadow of that self he is in denial of. And that is a rhetorician, somebody up on a stage who's a fast talker. And so, in a strange way, Mobius is about to witness his past self that he's in denial of, just through the schizophrenic lens. So that's very interesting. This is the first time he's actually acknowledging Phaedrus, his Phaedrus derivative of himself. And Mobius doesn't recognize what a fast talker is. It's Loki who tells him, "Oh, you're a con man," and then Mobius is like, "What? Oh, I guess that's a thing." So this is very interesting that Mobius is oblivious to his own shadow, who is a rhetorician or a fast talker. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the equivalent of Kronos with the trickster is pretty cool. You know, that's more of a part 2 thing because we're gonna finish up when we get to the end of his presentation. That felt like a good midway point because the whole vibe of the episode shifts after that presentation from we're just having fun and exploring the fair to like, chase scenes and the threat of death and all that. So that's going to be fun when we break into part 2. We've got a lot to cover for part 2. I'm a little concerned it's going to be 3-parter, but we'll see what happens. I like the pace though. I think that's what everyone's here for. So anyway, he's talking about, he's like, being all theatrical. He's putting on his play, right? For the turning of the sun to pray and also preying on this crowd as a con man. And as he's like building it up in suspense and he's like gathering the electricity flowing through it into time and gathering it into fine threads of, and then there's a pregnant pause. And he goes, power. And he for the first time he raises his voice and he exclaims it. He shouts it. This is the hey, the creative word. This is the moment of the hey, you yell hey when you want someone's attention, no matter what. It is a power word. It makes sense that hey is on the star card if star card in Aquarius is about the circulation of power and electricity through the realm. Makes sense perfectly. It's the flow and dispensation of energies symbolized by the aura or the wind or the airflow or the subtle mental power that vibrates the waters of chaos to shape the cosmos into material form and being. And just in case we didn't get the point of what I'm describing here, the next thing that happens is he starts talking about a chaos of particles. And as he's saying chaos and a chaos of particles, if you watch this show, he is vibrating himself while he says it. He is shaking like he's got Tourette's or something while he's a chaos and he's vibrating. The chaos of particles is transformed into, snaps his fingers, order. And he says, with my device, the wattage Edison uses to light a single bulb can light the whole of Chicago. And this is great too because it's illustrating the whole light wars, illumination wars between Tesla and Edison. He's just taking the role of Tesla in this allegory. But this part where he's discussing the chaos turning into order ab chaos, when he's shaking and vibrating himself, this is the imitation of the movement of God upon the primal source waters. The Genesis verse where it says God moved upon the face of the waters, that word in Hebrew really actually means he vibrated the waters, the divine wind. The hay, that's what's moving things, circulating things. It's amazing. So then we have basically it says, so you can light a few bulbs. Big deal. You'll need a lot more than that to light a whole city. And when you look into the billions and zillions of light bulbs at the World's Fair, you do start to wonder, how did they power all that? Dylan says, order never comes from chaos. The broken glass will never put itself back together. You know, how I read order ab chaos is sort of like opposames, the way the yin and the yang are really, they're opposames. So what appears like chaos to us from a different perspective is actually divine order. And in divine order from some perspectives is actually appears to be chaos. That's how I read it. I read it as they're the same thing, just from different sides. That's that. So anyway, this is the part where you really know he's the sun card, because he replies to the guy who's kind of heckling again about lighting the whole city. And he says, don't misunderstand me, sir. There's your rush. I do not want to light a city. I aim to light, to power the entire planet. He wants the light to power the entire world, the light of this world. There's the sun. That's the sun, the light of the world, the whole world. So this show is affirming the secret that Kronos is the sun, which it verifiably is in the older tradition. It's just the modern that is associated to the planet we call Saturn. And that's fine. I'm not do whatever you want with your occultism, but like in the original system, it is a solar system. It is what it is. It's all there. It's all there. But this line that he says here too is also really, really relevant, and much more so as the season goes on in the later episodes. But he's like, so call it a dream. Fine. Sneer and laugh it off as pure science fiction. But if it can be dreamed, it can be achieved, because all science is fiction until it's fact. The funny thing about that is fact is not the same as truth. But all science is fiction. I couldn't agree more. And then this is my last slide, Gabe, and we'll wrap it up. He says, all science is fiction. And this is the moment of, sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, right? And here's this word that means magic and is equal to resh, 200. It's kaf samek mem, QSM. It means magic or divination accomplished through the essence of light or radiant energy. That's exactly what he's doing here. It's also later in the episode where Miss Minutes makes herself big and scares everybody off. That's all part. And he's talking about how he can see the future. He knows the future. What do you know about the future, boy? More than you might think, is what he says. So he's doing magic and divination at the same time through the essence of light or radiant energy. And all this lighting and lightning really rolls up the whole God of Storms thing that Jehovah's got going on too. We're seeing like the lightning god, the time god, the savior god. It's all the same guy at different parts of the cycle. Boom. Pretty cool scene though.
Yeah, buddy.
So, that's all my slides for today. Other than I wanted to say the back to this. No, that's it. I'm leaving it. I'm good.
All right. So I want to tie in the fact that he says, I want the world. I don't just want the city. I want the world. Well, Ravona is actually what he wants. And this is Ravona's card in a fun way, because her name Ravona's is anagram for InnerVerse. So when he says, I want to light up the world, he's also paralleling his desire for the character of the world card, who is Ravona. And then can you go back to the part, the one with the star card where he's flipping the switch? Because I want to just be clear for everybody. I'm kind of piggybacking some of the Slick Dissident project on to our project here, because this is flipping the switch for me. This is what gives me the clue. We're going into the leap year. The votive offerings are at a prime premium. They're going at a premium. And so this is where when he flips this switch and we're going into election season, I'm flipping the switch and I'm putting her in the es dobrado, the back handspring. In the votive offering for the leap year is going to be very significant. It turns out February 29th. We're about 10 days away from the day of the offering. This is going to be the 366th day of the year, and it's the extra day. And it's like the opposite of a day out of time. Like other cultures, they remove a day. Well, for us, we add an extra day in. And whether you accept that rhythm or not, it's up to you. That's a votive offering. And yeah, some of us are working out whole new calendars where we can say, screw you guys and your hijack of the timeline. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that the leap year in me turning that card into the back handspring for the next 20-year cycle of Pluto being in Aquarius. It's official. It's official right there. And then, oh, can you bring the last graphic I sent you? Because that correlates to wrap everything up. Because rod of God, things falling out of the sky. It turns out on our cicada weave in Italian, the word for cicadas means it falls on us. So it has like an esoteric mana, but it also has an aspect of like, oh, is Bitcoin gonna be like money falling out of the sky? Is the big government tit that we've all been waiting for just gonna come down and feed us from oblivion? Or also in the headlines, they want people to think that these space stations, these satelloons, are going to descend from on high. And so flipping a switch and turning off the electricity has been a looming threat for winter after winter after winter. They talk about it every year. So I grabbed this graphic of the blue orb as it's presented to us with the Brazilians of satellites that are just poised to fall around your ears. And the fact that the word cicada in Italian is it falls on us, that is so interesting. Cicada is C9, C1, D1. Cicada is 911, CDC encoded. ISS is a 911. So I just want to highlight how it's all spells. It's all spellcraft. They're just accentuating what is already naturally occurring for the sake of good headlines. And the dogs of war, the Dow Jones, DOW, Dow Jones, predicting our migrational patterns and our decisions as the Enneagram yields behavioral predictability. And that's what they rely on. That's what they rely on. So yeah, my star card is flipping
That's
a
the
big fat bird and dropping a hand grenade in the global stage.
Enneagram. What did you just say about the Enneagram? Predictability?
Yes. My theory on the Enneagram is this is the Hellenization of culture. And as long as we are entertained by the Hellenistic imprint from the Constantine reset, then the consistency of a Hellenized psychology can be harnessed, harbored, fostered, and monopolized on by the
And
gauntlet.
that imprint puts most people into the 6 category. Back to all the 6 going on in this episode. Wow. Interesting.
Yes,
And
yes, they definitely
it's a
they sublimated
heliocentric
great.
culture. And we have all this 6 relating to the sun that we're seeing just in this reveal of this decode. So it has to do with heliocentrism too. Pete, I'm going to read some of the comments. You guys have been awesome in the chat. I wish there was time that I could respond to all of the brilliant things that you say, but I will just read a couple of the recent ones. PK saying, I lean towards that Kronos or Saturn was the sun at a different time of a different, in quotes, world. Kronos gave warmth. Steiner has an interesting take on it with some receipts. I will give you on that I really like the theory of the Earth growing and new luminaries forming at intervals of time when the Earth expands through some kind of electrolysis process. Like energy gets low in the container, and then God has to plug it in, metaphorically, or whatever the creator is outside or above, beyond the contained sphere, the dome, the firmament, maybe. And maybe the first luminary was Kronos, or the planet we call Saturn. There could, we don't know, but in terms of things that I will make claims about, it has to fall within the realm of what's observable in nature. So I wouldn't claim that, but I love to entertain that idea. On that note, though, when you go back to the ancients, nobody called the planets by the names of gods until way later. So when we're talking about the planet called Saturn and associating that with Kronos, that never was originally the association, but the solar association or the top god association for sure was, especially when you understand the phonetics of the Karen. And then Dylan says, Freemasonry made Abram Saturn, but it's predicated on the presumption that the planet has the highest orbit. But you'd need an Earth radius to do that, which no one has because the equator is a flat Earth measurement. Old World Micmac says, man was created from a bolt of lightning hitting an ash tree. Michael H. says, I appreciate you guys. Thank you again. Thank you, man. Thank you. Very, very fun. Micmac says, helio is the same word as hyro.
Absolutely.
Sacred. Yeah, it's the hero. Hero worship, helio worship. Whoa, it's the same thing. So you guys make it good. Leah Redmond says, best place to learn about the spells and spelling. I would say to Leah, check out the Spirit World books by Dylan Secosio. World is spelled WHIRLED. If you want to listen instead of read, I've got audiobooks where I recorded the audio for those books, and you can check it out. Linked in the description of this episode or any other episode. Yeah. And Gabe, what's up?
I might need a lifeline from the chat. There's a fella who has research out there about extremely large stone uh, bodies, figures, forms. Particularly, he's found immense elephants that are the size of mountains. And he climbed into one of them with a list of 50 anatomical expectations in the skull of an elephant. And he found over 70. Uh, he extended his list beyond 50 anatomical markers for a giant elephant skull. I forget the name of his work. It's a single word. His work is really interesting, but one of the things he's garnered, thank you. There it is.
7?
There it is. One of the things, yes.
I
One of the
have
things
access to
he
that
has
guy on
gifted me
Telegram in one of the
is
groups I'm in if you want to talk to him.
it's amazing, Chance. If you can get your head around what a heartstone is, you learn what a heartstone is, and then just go on a walk. Just go on a walk anywhere. And I challenge you not to find a heartstone once you know what you're looking for. I went in my backyard one day. I found over 100 of them. Granted, I had a huge pile of stones to choose from, and I made a ring of heartstones. And that is evidence to me that something is taking very good care of us. And we have gone through catastrophes of unthinkable proportions. And because of this, Darwinism can kiss our ass. Catastrophism saves us from this gradualistic, everything's been the same all along, and therefore you came from monkeys fucking. Darwin can kiss our ass because these heartstones indicate that we are so fortunate. We're so fortunate to be here, and something has been taking care of us. And now the savior thing. I want to talk about the savior thing too.
Well, wait,
Look
Gabe.
at these planets with the huge. Oh yeah.
Darwin can kiss our cat's ass. Cat ass trophy.
He could kiss our. He could kiss our catastrophism. Yes. And another beautiful thing about the savior is every time you see a pock mark on a Mars or a pock mark on the moon, you can assume that that might have been an asteroid that might have had your number. And you should be really grateful that Athena is a defensive goddess. She has that shield to protect us. And so the very likelihood of electric lightning bolts, meteors flying, whatever, it's all right there for your eyes to take in. And so essentially, what I'm saying is the moon is our savior. It saved our ass for every time there's a pockmark on it. That could have been somebody's house getting taken out or a whole village or whatever, disasters. So the savior thing is actually provable by the markations that our eyes can look at. And every little hole up there is like, thank you, Lord, for saving me. Thank you, Lord, for saving me. I'm glad that one didn't get me. So yeah, the savior thing is legit. It's legit. But it's not what some people paint it out to be or turn it into an industry out of. So yeah, there's my 2 cents on catastrophism.
I like that the moon as savior because the crescent moon symbol is also esoterically the ark symbol, which is where humanity is saved in the boat, the ark. PK says the golden age of Kronos was Hesiod's eternal spring. Yeah, that's true. And this is Kronos being born in the springtime in this episode. But Gabe, I think I think we've got ourselves to a good point to wrap it up. It's been a wild ride tonight. My ass is ready to be out of this chair though. Thanks, man. What a good time. I'm really enjoy you being at this battle station instead of the other one. I feel like our flow was really snappy and good tonight. So thank you. And thanks to Kyle and of Tippecanoe Herbs and Rand for the super chats. A lot more of you guys have been watching those. So if anyone else wants to support our work, Gabe is available to be compensated at Slick Dissident, $ Slick Dissident on Cash App. I've got lots of ways you can support me. There's InnerVerseMerch.com. Get something cool to wear. Adorn your body temple. There's Tippecanoe Herbs with the InnerVerse coupon code. Wear the best medicine in the realm. And from one of my favorite people in the realm, Kyle Denton and his beautiful family and employees make awesome stuff. You could get an AquaCure. You know, we talked about hydrogen and electrolysis. You could get an AquaCure with my coupon code that's described in the show notes. Very big investment, but pretty amazing piece of technology. Or there's the Spirit World audiobooks. And there's also Clive DeCarl selling good supplements as well. Magnesium, vitamin C, the essentials, the basics. And of course, you can support InnerVerse on Patreon or Rockfin. And, you know, when I get back to making some traditional episodes with a free hour and a paid hour, you'll even get the bonus content. But there's tons in the archive. So even if I haven't made a new traditional episode for a while, there's so much good paywall content out there that you can access by supporting me. You know, at least going back to 2019. I think I was pretty good by 2019. Definitely by 2020, it's pretty good. So there's years of stuff. And that's that. It's been a great show. Dylan's right. This has been a great show. These days are fun for me, full of research. And then the whole time I'm just excited. Can't wait to see Gabe's reaction to things like the victim of Victor time. I think that was my top weave. But yeah, whoa, slam dunk. PK says y'all crushed it. Thanks, man. Seriously, this is nice. so much of the style of these analysis is because PK put me onto this one Gematria book, and now I look through that lens, and there's so much to it. So appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, man. I have 2 little footnotes. One is I keep reminding everybody, go get Occultist Monday so that Juan has more to do with his life. Some of my work is always in is in his work so far, and he's got a couple more of mine for the upcoming episodes if he gets back on it. So, and also I was on with Topher. It came out, I think, yesterday over on Biocharisma, and we weaved hard and deep. It was amazing. And then just when Topher thought I was going to let him go, he's like, I can't take anymore. I made him stick around for an extra hour. So the gravy ladling was vast, wide, and delicious. So
few have
I share that with everybody.
Few have got the stamina that you have for this work, but I've been building up my strength by all of these Marvel shows with you. All right. Good night, everybody. We love you. Thanks for hanging out. See you for the next one.
Big love.